Please come journey with me inside the world where technology meets human mind, where body functions are wirelessly controlled and souls are overridden and mapped on three-dimensional workstations, all done from anywhere in the world to anyone in and of this world, where everyone has their own signature IP address, where one's soul can and is being hacked and overridden. Brain mapping is not new. The father of propaganda, Edward Bernays, from the 1920s, was said to invent the business of mass mind control. The wealthy, elite, and powerful have understood for a very long time now how the brain functions, which led to behavior modification capabilities, which led to DARPA and now beyond. They have known how to make us behave and act through propaganda techniques and technologies for a very long time. In short, they have trained our minds since public schooling began, and now they have the technology to override our brains. The huge difference between nearly 100 years ago when Tesla rediscovered wireless communications and today's modern wireless techno capabilities is that the power elite know a massive amount more about our mind, body, and spirit than we do. Truth be told. Since at least the 1970s, psychotronic electronic harassment has been used to touchlessly torture anyone at will using decades-old, over-the-horizon technologies, cell towers, HAARP, and geoengineering of the skies around the world to access all from anywhere at any time wirelessly. Touchless torture methods used are through microfiber-carrying nanobots inhaled by all through the aerosol releases from geoengineering activities overhead since at least 1978. We all have these micro nanofibers inside of us, as you shall learn from a little further in.
What this committee learned, I would like to review today with a little more detail than Dr. Faden said, because I think it must be engraved on our national memory. Thousands of government-sponsored experiments did take place at hospitals, universities, and military bases around our nation. While most of the tests were ethical by any standards, some were unethical, not only by today's standards, but by the standards of the time in which they were conducted. They failed both the test of our national values and the test of humanity. Americans were kept in the dark about the effects of what was being done to them. The deception extended beyond the test subjects themselves to encompass their families and the American people as a whole. For these experiments were kept secret, and they were shrouded not for a compelling reason of national security, but for the simple fear of embarrassment.
But we were told all that stopped. Is that untrue?
Untrue. These programs continue under new names, new budgets. It's the ultimate weapon.
And if you look at this from above, it's a really beautiful structure. I know it's about ugly stuff, but it's a beautiful structure because when you look at the entire thing and you try to find solutions to it, you realize actually that everybody who is involved on the different agendas, on the different levels, is doing the same mistake. It is the Luciferic game. Let me participate in your power and I will serve you. I don't want to know what you're doing. I don't want to stand in my own responsibility. Just let me participate from your power, and I will serve. This is the Luciferic deal everybody is doing. And we are doing this by going to vote a government, yeah, that is taking care of all the pipes we are connected to. Yeah. But we let go of our responsibility and we let them do. They're giving control to the military domain. The military domain is giving control, same game, to the intelligence community. The intelligence community is giving control to the black magicians. The black magicians are giving control to the demons. And the demons lost control to their AI.
What do these things want, and why are they here?
You still don't get it, do you, boy?
They have recruited the rich and the powerful.
They're running the whole show.
Wake up! They're all about you, all around you. Blinded us to the truth.
Take a look. They are safe as long as they are not discovered.
I don't know what they are or where they came from, but we gotta stop them. Stay away from me. Put these on. They have us. Look at them. They're everywhere.
We've interfered with the ability to compute with numbers.
6, 7, 8.
Okay.
Ooh, yeah.
Yes. We've interfered with the ability to speak.
London Bridge, London Bridge, London Bridge is falling down.
You think of something you can do, and we've basically interfered with it with this machine.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
So what's the problem?
I don't know.
This is torture, and I don't care if they call it no-touch torture, whatever euphemisms the U.S. government and their legal staff have come up with. This is the greatest atrocity and crime against humanity that we have known since Hitler. And they need sample points. And nobody likes to hear they were randomly chosen for torture.
So the world, so you're trying to tell me
Your
that
very consciousness, the thing you call the soul, is information contained in the biological computing machinery of your brain. And if someone can override that, you lose your sense of soul, your sense of self.
Well, it's kind of like man versus machine. Machine always moves faster than man is capable of doing
That's right.
itself.
Technology is evolving through mankind as a separate life form, faster than we evolve biologically. So machines will rule the world. I mean,
Dr. Robert Duncan put together the technology that allows the government to transmit thoughts and voices into the heads of Americans.
First question for you. What's negative about what you've done?
I've empowered the dark side by some of my work.
And what do you mean by that?
Technology is neutral.
Right.
It can be used for good or evil. I've worked on projects for the CIA, Justice Department, and Department of Defense.
You worked for these people. You worked on this. You helped to develop it.
I was naive. I did not know how the technologies were going to be put together and the ultimate weapon created. That's part of the whole world domination strategy. Control the population from subconsciously to consciously.
Dr. Duncan goes on to say, I was unlucky. I got a demonstration of the full works of mind control technologies in Satan, the silent assassination through amplification of neurons program, to try and kill the target through car crashes, heart attack, depression, and suicide, self-destructing behavior, neglect, or to be a programmed assassin. They were somewhat fair in that they told me ahead of time using the synthetic telepathy exactly how they were going to try to kill me each day. They told me every torture they were to inflict on me ahead of time. It was oddly routine for them. They said that they had successfully killed an artist in San Francisco with a heart attack, a woman pediatrician, an old lady in a nursing home. They felt pretty confident that they could kill me with EEG cloning. The 200 people in their weapon testing group are competing for points according to the main heterodyne project leader. Those that gained enough experience points could go on the psychic assassins and mind controllers team who work on real projects like world leaders after they collected the effectiveness of the pain data, collected the mind control statistics, and mapped the unique brain waves that I had for their database.
I see everything that happens every day, and I feel that it's a crime against humanity to not say these things and not make others aware of these things.
I don't get to have a normal life because I'm a targeted individual. I don't get to have a wife and kids and a career where I get to rise and fall on my own merits. That's not what targeted individuals get. What we get is grief and pain and hardship and loneliness. And it's not fair.
A vicious cycle of fear, avoidance, mistrust, and misunderstanding had been established. This was a battle in which I felt powerless and incapable of establishing any kind of peace or reconciliation. 2 years later, and the deterioration was dramatic. By now, I had the whole frenzied repertoire. Terrifying voices, grotesque visions, bizarre, intractable delusions. My mental health status had been a catalyst for discrimination, verbal abuse, and physical and sexual assault. And I've been told by my psychiatrist, Eleanor, you'd be better off with cancer because cancer is easier to cure than schizophrenia. I'd been diagnosed, drugged, and discarded, and was by now so tormented by the voices that I attempted to drill a hole in my head in order to get them out.
Watching my every move. And it had to get to the point to where I was completely scared shitless of the fact that I had no privacy. That I finally was like, fuck it, I don't care, let them watch me. There's nothing that I am doing that is going to get me into trouble or get me any more hurt than I already am.
And I'm sorry to be coming to you looking so haggard and ungroomed and just terrible and tired and bloated. But this is what being targeted does to you. And this is the result of having to fight every day, all the time, for your life and your sanity. And nobody cares, or nobody understands, or they're told to not believe you and you're crazy.
First thing I want to talk about is nanofibers. Through nanotechnology and chemtrails, the control panel stalkers who are basically in an operations center watching the target individuals are able to monitor and induce all sorts of things in a targeted individual. So this is very freaky. They're able to manipulate a target individual's bodily functions, things like their pain receptors, their stress hormones, stuff like that. It is absolutely creepy.
Now, what I'm getting at is that the fact that Earth, literally this instant is a prison for people on Earth, and they are not even aware of it. And everything is encoded, and when you start to wake up, you understand this.
Speaking of the, I'm glad you brought that up as far as the, we're going to kill your family, we're going to do this, because in my experiences, the one time that I didn't do what they said, and guys, please don't laugh about this and don't judge me, but they tell me things like, hey, if you don't masturbate, we're going to murder your grandmother. I know it sounds crazy, man, and I don't know who the hell want to see me masturbate. I know,
it's just the control. They just want to see, will you obey? Will you obey?
But listen to this. The first time, and I promise you guys this, the first time that I didn't do what I was told, I went upstairs, and my grandmother, she's in a wheelchair, she has a pacemaker, she's 82 years old. Within minutes, because I didn't masturbate, my grandmother was slumped over in a wheelchair. I have to pick her up, put her on the toilet because she feels that she's kind of constipated and she thinks that it's gas. And, I know that they have something called...
So it's very old technology in terms of their tactics.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry I interrupted you.
I'm sorry. I'm glad you explained that because now people know that I'm not crazy about what they were capable of doing. So my grandmother, I pick her up off the toilet, I put her back in a wheelchair. We had to use her life alert. She actually went to the hospital, and as she's going to the hospital, I heard the person speaking to me says, I told you, if you did masturbate, what I was going to do. So there goes the whole theory of, these are idle threats. Now I am totally at the mercy and the control of verbal control. And this isn't being infected on me. There have been times where I've been in the same room as my brother, and I've seen, I've heard the person speaking to me says, watch your brother hold his heart, or watch your brother hold his head. And these people are complaining of headaches, and they're also complaining of heart pain. So when I'm told to do something, if I don't do something, my family's going to be hurt. I know that this is real, even if my family doesn't know this is real. So now I'm forced to do whatever I'm told to do.
And they need sample points. And nobody likes to hear they were randomly chosen for torture.
Next project, Satan. Silent assassination through amplification of neurons. I was able to interview over 500 people that know they are electronically harassed, slipped drugs, fed radiation, MK-Ultra mind-controlled, or directed energy weapons test victims. Several have died while writing this book. They range from children to the elderly, from the poor to the wealthy, from religious to atheist, from uneducated to educated. People are chosen at random like in all their other tests. There is a segment that is overwhelmingly large for a random testing pool, and that the government, whistleblowers, FBI agents, military personnel, or cops in particular, are targeted by these weapons if they testify against other government agencies.
There has been a force that is mostly unseen in control of this planet for an extremely long time, and evidence very much suggests that this force is attempting to manipulate the evolution of human consciousness that is currently taking place. It is very likely the same force that first reduced mankind to the impaired state we now find ourselves in, where our pineal gland is closed, thereby cutting us off from our higher senses, and where our DNA is 97% dormant, whereby each person is reduced to operating to only 3% of their actual capability.
Humans, for the most part, don't have a clue. They don't want one or need one either. They're happy. They think they have a good bead on things.
Well, why the big secret? People are smart. They can handle it.
The person is smart. People are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals, and you know it. 1,500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was the center of the universe. 500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was flat. And 15 minutes ago, you knew that people were alone on this planet. Imagine what you'll know tomorrow.
This is a man-made motor, a motor so small that more than 6,000 of them would fit on the head of a pin. Welcome to the world of the nanometer, a unit of measure that is 1/1000th of a meter.
If we start at the back of the brain, we've switched off my visual cortex, so made me unable to see things. If we move a little bit forward in the brain, we've interfered with people's ability and my ability to see faces. A little bit further forward, we've interfered with the ability to perform actions. Start moving your finger.
It's quite odd.
It's not your finger anymore.
It's not my finger anymore.
We know that nanoscale materials can enter inside cells, and we know that that could have consequences for health. And so it's incumbent, it's really required that we do research to understand what is the nature of the interaction between new engineered artificial nanoscale materials and living systems, not just cells, but whole living beings.
I don't think he did. He said they spent half a year and $10 billion to optimize the cluster topology. You need to think about cluster topologies. If you want to have these RNA or DNA clusters carry intelligence, carry soul, carry an artificial life form, then it makes sense. And if you picture this, we are infected with this RNA, And the RNA is forming a cluster of 1 millimeter distances around us. And a cluster like this is able to carry a computer program or an artificial, non-physical structure or being. This structure can hoover through the field, but it also can hoover into us. And this structure knows how to access the light production, and it knows how to access the production of poisons. And it also carries intelligence in itself and has the ability to make decisions. This is something that is just implied by the fact that he said we needed to optimize cluster topology. It's a little bit far out, it's a little bit speculation within this, but it gives me a kind of triggering moment when I listen to the word smart dust. Yeah? I get the feeling that this somehow is related to this capability of these optimized cluster topology to carry intelligence and to make its own decisions.
The microbots are controlled with this neurotransmitter. I think what I want them to do, they do it. The applications for this tech are limitless. Construction. What used to take teams of people working by hand for months or years can now be accomplished by one person. And that's just the beginning.
Different fibers, assembling, disassembling your cells.
What is
this?
This
is a molecular machine that walks around in your cells. Right now it's called a kinesin and transports things. So for example, when things want to move around your cells, they don't just float around randomly. They actually
I like
actively
that.
moved around with little machines, little robots, nanobots that power your cells. What you see here is actually an amazing machine coming out of these little pores, which actually assembles other machines. This is like the factory floor of your cells. It's called a ribosome. It reads your RNA.
See, nanocells are real small. 1,000 times smaller than these dust particulates. You inhale it, they go to work replicating, spreading like a virus, multiplying in exponentials. 6 months' time, I could have 100 million people. Converted ditch diggers, porn stars, and presidents. Not one would be the wiser. 100 million people who buy what I want them to buy and do pretty much damn well anything I figure they ought to do.
While people wait for redemption to be delivered to them via an outside source, the destructive machine of modern civilization continues to grind slowly forward towards its inevitable conclusion. Obviously, it is extremely important for mankind to truly grasp the depths of the problems we are facing and to the peril that our collective failure to deal with things has placed us in. And this peril includes not only the human race, but the entire Earth and all life upon it.
So what you're telling me, every one of us should be in fear of this because every one of us at some point will be targeted?
The technology's advanced that far. That's part of the whole world domination strategy. Control the population from subconsciously to consciously.
You're not still working for them.
No.
You're unequivocally looking me right in the eye right now, and you're telling me you have no more to do with this and that you're out to expose it?
That's correct, sir.
With your background and what you know, can you give us a hint on what we ought to do?
No.
No. Is it too late?
I actually believe it's too late.
Who are the controllers? I mean, is that our president? The Federal Reserve?
No.
So these are people within our government at a certain level making these decisions, and they're not necessarily our president or our elected officials.
That's exactly right.
And now we've got a motive. Controlling dissenters, controlling the world, controlling you and me.
Sleep.
Sleep.
Sleep. Sleep.
The elites, Those who can afford to carry out practices such as chemtrails generally don't eat processed or genetically altered food, and it is extremely unlikely that they are subject to the same rigorous vaccination regime as the general public. If mankind is indeed ingesting nanoparticulates without their general knowledge, then how might such machines be controlled or switched on? In answer to this question, one only needs to realize that it is now a long-established fact that when anything occurs within the human experience, ultimately the information travels around the body electromagnetically. All our five senses, along with any emotional information, is all interpreted by the brain via these electromagnetic signals. Therefore, it is also an established fact that man can be influenced and even controlled via electromagnetism.
Metallic salts have made our air conductive. This means that we and everything around us can transmit and propagate energy. The air is no longer neutral.
I've survived a lot of things, you know. People look at me and they would never ever realize what I've been through, and I don't even want to explain what I've been through, but I can tell you this, that throughout everything that I survived, it's because I remembered love. And there was days where I didn't have anything and I was in the worst situation. I was just a little child, and I would wake up and I'd look at the sun every morning and I just have so much heart love and be so happy and smile, and a person would be like, why are you smiling? And you're not allowed to smile. Why do you smile? And I would explain to them, because I feel love, and that is very, very important to me. All this time I think I have survived because of the fact that my heart is open, and I really do care about people, and I really, really, really see that others, the really sad thing, people aren't working from their heart. They're working from their ego or from other things, and it messes them up. And if everybody would just start opening their hearts and being kind and compassionate and caring, it's not no religion to do those things. It's something normal that we have forgot to do. If we do those more often, the world would be a much better place for us and our children.
It's not about replacing people. It will never work. We need to replace the game.
Stanford Scientology and the CIA. This is from a book by Alex Constantine on psychic spying at the Stanford Research Institute, or CIA, mind control. Quote, concrete evidence that electronic mind control was the true object of study at Stanford Research Institute was exposed by the Washington Post in 1977. The Secretary of Navy at the time, Dr. Sam Kozlov, received a routine briefing on various research projects, including SRIs. As the briefer flashed his chart onto the screen and began to speak, Kozlov interrupted, "What the hell is that about?" Among the glowing words on the projected chart, the section described SRI's work was labeled, quote, ELF and mind control. Now, let's assume that Dr. Kozlov, the head of the Navy, knew about this program. ELF stands for extremely long frequency electronic magnetic waves from the very slow brain frequencies up to 100 cycles per second. The Navy quietly continued to fork out $100,000 for a 2-year project by bionics specialist. The, quote, remote viewing, end quote, team at SRI was really engaged at projecting words and images directly to the cranium. It was not a humanitarian pastime. The project was military, and test subjects are subjected to a lifetime of EM torture, plied with the same thorough disregard for human rights as the radiation tests conducted to the height of the Cold War. To be sure, the treatment of subjects received at the hands of their own government would be considered atrocities if practiced in wartime. Now, please note they were using this back in 1977. Electronic mind control machines were championed at SRI by Dr. Carl Pribram, Director of Neuropsychology Research Laboratory. I certainly could educate a child by putting an electrode in the lateral hypothalamus and then selecting the situations in which I stimulate it. In this way, I can grossly change his behavior. Psychology Today touted Pribram as, quote, the Magellan of brain science, end quote. He obtained his degrees, BS, MD at the University of Chicago. SRI studied how the brain processes and stores sensory imagery, he is credited with discovering that mental imaging bears a close resemblance to the hologram projection, the basis for transmitting images to the brains of test subjects under the misnomer of remote viewing. The SRI-PSI experiments were supervised at Langley, Virginia by John McMahon, second in commander under William Casey, succeeding Bobby Ray Inman. The SAIC director, McMahon, has, according to Philip Agee, the CIA whistleblowing exile, an affinity for, quote, technological exotics for the CIA covert actions. He was recruited from the agency after his graduation from Holy Cross College, a Jesuit school, and he's a former director of the Technical Services Division, Deputy Director for Operations. And in 1982, McMahon was appointed Deputy Director of the CIA. He left the agency 6 years later to take the position of President of Lockheed Missiles and Space Systems Group. In 1994, he moved to the Draper Laboratories. He is the Director of Defense Enterprise Fund and an advisor to the congressional committees. Many of the SRI empaths were mustered from L. Ron Hubbard's Church of Scientology. Harold Puthoff, the Institute's senior researcher, is a leading Scientologist. So you get an idea of the characters here we're dealing with, but also how long this mind control hologram has been being implanted into people's brains. To illustrate how easily and simply technology has been able to manipulate the human mind, this is an abstract from a patent that was taken out in the United States back in 2001. Nervous system manipulation by electromagnetic fields from monitors. Psychological effects have been observed in a human subject in response to stimulation of the skin with weak electromagnetic fields that are pulsed with certain frequencies near the half hertz or 2.4 hertz, such as to excite a sensory resonance. Many computer monitors and TV tubes, when displaying pulsed images, emit pulsed electromagnetic fields of sufficient amplitudes to cause such excitation. It is therefore possible to manipulate the nervous system of a subject by pulsing images displayed on a nearby computer or TV set. On the TV, the imaging pulsing may be embedded in the program material, or it may be overlaid by modulating a video stream either as an RF signal or as a video signal. The image displayed on a computer monitor may be pulsed effectively by a simple computer program. For certain monitors, pulsed electromagnetic fields capable of exciting sensory resonances in nearby subjects may be generated even as the displayed images are pulsed with subliminal intensity. So what this means is through our plasma TVs, and this is why when plasma just came out back in 2001, they're able to use the plasma TVs to change and alter the brainwave frequencies of everyone that is watching a TV or holding the TV or computer monitors, such as what you're looking at this on.
It's if you look at what we do now, it's what happened to the apes in this beautiful experiment. I love this story. I have to repeat it every time I'm on stage. They tried to teach apes to use money. It took 3 days. They knew how it works. After 3 weeks, the boys in the ape family started to steal and betray, and the girls started to prostitute themselves. And after 6 weeks, the biologists who run the project decided to stop the project because they could see the social patterns fall to bits and pieces, getting self-destructive and ugly. And then they decided to take the money away again. Big mistake. The apes were not willing to let go of this. They were beating the biologists up when they tried to get the money back. And this is gaming addiction. And every single human who is part of economy has fallen to this gaming addiction. And the core of this gaming addiction is scarcity. We think we don't have enough. This is why we grab as much as we can. This is what creates the idea of money and the idea to possess things. This is not nature. This is a demonic program to bring us into self-destructive patterns. Look at the Red Indians in America, at the native tribes. They don't have money, they have love. And if we all understand the game, we can just say, hey, stupid game, let's let go of it. And we can stop playing these thing that basically is nothing else than being afraid of self-responsibility. And I think we are at the point in history where every single individual should master that, to regain self-responsibility, and then we will not need a government. It's not about changing the government, because the entire concept of governments, having somebody to control, is demonic. It's not about replacing people. It will never work. We need to replace the game.
Since much of the evidence presented here about targeting individuals and the actual devices used comes from Dr. Robert Duncan, I wanted to read part of his bio about why he has the knowledge to comment the way he has. Harvard College honors computer science, minor in pre-med, and advanced degrees, Harvard, Dartmouth in business and science, the neural networks, virtual reality, EEG, controlled robotics, worked for the DoD, Navy, NATO, various intelligence agencies, science projects, worked integrating HAARP, so we'd know about the electromagnetic frequencies, a couple other spook agency names here. I've worked on projects for the Justice Department, tracking terrorists, developed system for the FBI to track license plates at toll booths, worked on the Soldier 2000 program, worked in telemedicine, robotic surgery, virtual reality applications for the Army, for DARPA, satellite computer vision tracking applications. Then he goes at the very end of it, my apologies to the human race for my contribution to tyranny.
There are very bad things going on, at least in the United States with the CIA, with torture and interrogation. Now, they've improved their methods. It can all be done wirelessly now. So you can insert maximum pain into a human being, and maybe it's for interrogation.
But yeah, I've been trying to expose this since 2002, I would say. So I've been in the field for over a decade and just trying to expose these technologies, but they've existed much before me and when I worked on them. I can find targeted individuals as far as, you're one of the oldest ones, from 1976 there seemed to be a large increase in targeted individuals using this technology. And then again, every time the military gets a bigger budget, there seems to be more TIs involved. And then of course after 9/11, there was a whole bunch of TIs that were brought into the program. And they're trying to improve on this weapon technology, and they need sample points. And nobody likes to hear they were in the past. You know, the U.S. government purposely chose for a lot of their, non-consensual human experimentation programs, poor people, people that were easily discredited, and usually the black community.
Right. Like the Tuskegee experiment, for one, which was the most heinous crime. Well, until now, until now.
Yeah, until now. But this hasn't been revealed yet, or people don't accept it yet, this kind of no-touch torture and silent death. But yeah, I think the program has been expanded since then to include all classifications of human beings. This is worldwide. I just did an interview with a major news agency for South Korea, and they're saying it's rampant there. Russia has a huge population. China has a huge population.
But in the future, every square inch of every city will be alive with intelligence. Because every street and every building will have a network of microcomputers built right into them. Dr. Chris Piester calls it smart dust.
A smart dust particle, or mote, is a wireless sensor with sensing, computation, communication, and power in one package.
These all-in-one microcomputers will be small, very small.
The size of a mote today is about the size of a grain of rice. And we've shown that we can make the circuitry small enough and light enough that eventually it will be possible to make things that are on a sub-millimeter size scale.
Tiny specks of computer smart dust will form a vast invisible network that can help manage the infrastructure of even the largest city.
Smart cities in the future will take this low power, inexpensive, small technology and basically distribute it everywhere.
But smart dust will also allow buildings and streets to recognize you and respond accordingly.
I think increasingly the environment will respond to who we are and adapt in consequence.
The city will know where you are if you want it to.
Your workplace will know you. Smart dust at the entrance will boot up your computer. And smart dust embedded in the elevator doors will automatically ring your floor.
Smart dust is going to sense the environment and allow us to improve the way that we live our lives.
No matter how we live in the future city, it will be radically different.
Okay, but...
Okay, so wait. So it's really true. So what this means is that becomes my first superpower. I really want this superpower. It means that my arms are like wires, my hands are like alligator clips. When I touch my phone, my computer, my door, my car, I'm authenticated in. First superpower. Like, I want that.
So we're not shipping that right away.
Yeah, no. We're not shipping that right away. But it sounds like...
This is FDA cleared?
So here's the thing. This is not science fiction. This pill was actually made by a company called Proteus. And they've developed it for medical applications. That pill has been CE stamped and cleared by the FDA. You can take 30 of those per day for the rest of your life.
And then what happens? Does your heart beat change? Does your...
We can just tell that you've taken the pill.
You will find quite soon that electrical signals start to be picked up by the chips. The brain cells connect not only to the chips, but they also start to put out feelers to each other. They connect to each other, they connect to the chip. You get a biodigital device. I'm telling you history, my friends. You tell me the future. These devices have been grown for the last 5 to 10 years. So could we have a human brain that can go online? This is history. We already did it in animals. We have rats and mice that can think electrically. They produce currents and thoughts which go from one mouse to another. The mouse says, I'm thirsty, and a signal electronically goes to another mouse in another laboratory saying, please, can you give me a drink? If the other mouse agrees to give the first mouse a drink, he gets some food. We are living in a strange world. I am not saying that you're going to have a plug-in module for mathematics in the future or language. I'm just saying we are entering new territory for the future.
Inside the brain. Here are human nerve cells growing onto the surface of an RFID-type chip. Human brain cells don't need to be taught to do this. They are genetically programmed to work with computers. In fact, they love computers. Here's an example. Here is a chip. There's the chip. You put the brain tissue on and it organizes itself. The brain cells work their way in and they start communicating with each other and with the brain of the PC. So it means we can have thinking computers. Maybe 10 trillion of these devices every few years entering the environment. You're talking about total knowledge of consumer behavior watched in real time and huge business opportunities. Why? Because it means we can then start to predict human behavior.
Now, if you want to understand the agenda behind, there was a brave lady at Harvard University that made the chemical analysis of these fibers in the nanolab. And she threw out just a number of chemical formulas. I'm not going to name them. And she also analyzed the single color particles that she found in the air, also the color airborne, that then at a certain point is entering the mycelium after it replicated within the human body. Yeah, so this is coming to the concept of self-assembling nanobots. Self-assembly means you spray the fiber, it is replicating, you spray the color, and within the human body, the color and the fiber is mounting to a working unit. This is what you call self-assembling nanobot.
The second group of materials found in these environmental samples is unidentifiable fibers. And I really want you to appreciate the meaning of unidentifiable. These fibers have been sent to sophisticated laboratories, and there is nothing in the databases that match them. These are fibers, we could say, that do not exist in nature.
So we have highly transparent nanoparticles. They have a refraction that is 4 times higher than the one of diamonds. That if you look it up on Wikipedia, you can read there that they are valid for scalar applications, that they can be used in applications utilizing time reverse field structures. It is a set of physics that is not in the public domain. It's scalar physics. And then something very interesting happens. These protein prion things try to rebuild the nervous system. It is a self-healing process of the body. But if you don't have copper, you cannot rebuild the nervous system. So the body is taking the next heavy metals it can access, and this is barium and strontium. So it starts building a nervous system that is based on protein prion barium. And this is kind of an antenna for electromagnetic fields. So we are rebuilding a nervous system that is sensitive on electromagnetic fields. And not only that the nerve itself becomes sensitive, also the barium-strontium titanate nanocrystals, they display barium and strontium on their surface from the crystalline structure, and the new built nerves kind of grow onto the crystal. So what you get is a new connecting point for the nervous system that is piezoelectric. And whenever this is receiving a signal, it's firing electrons. So you have a direct access to the nervous system of the human being. This is one nanobot that you can find in the literature, which is not about military technology, but already about controlling the civil population of countries by accessing their nervous system to introduce signals.
But what I'm concerned about mainly is the medical effect, and that's because of this very strong connection between aluminum passing through this pathway into the brain is so strongly connected with Alzheimer's disease and other diseases of memory. If you're aerosolizing this and spraying literally tons of it over the world, and people are constantly breathing that aerosolized nano-sized aluminum, which will easily penetrate filters in your air-conditioned system, enter your home. So you're breathing it 24 hours a day, producing high levels of aluminum in this part of the brain, and the consequences could be absolutely devastating. Could cause a huge increase in Alzheimer's disease and inflammatory neurological disorders. I watched YouTube, which was a geoengineering conference that the government had put on. And in the conference, one of the questions somebody in the audience asked, well, what is the medical effect of spraying aluminum in the atmosphere? And the speaker said, well, we don't really know, but we're in the process of researching that. Well, of course, that was an absolute lie. We do know what it does.
Right.
But the
Anna Guthrie alongside Matt Lauer and Al Roker. Will someone do the junior high hug? It's like this. You gotta make it real awkward.
That's exactly how
you
have to have a certain amount of distance between the bodies
exactly.
in junior high.
Yes, like they say in Catholic school, leave room for the Holy Ghost. Anyway, there is a lot of memories today, actually. It's a big day in music history.
35 years ago today, Elvis Presley passed away, the king of rock and roll. And as Mark Cohn says in his great song, Walking in Memphis, there's a pretty little thing waiting for the king down in the...
You can't control what is coming out of your mouth. And it's not what's in your thought processes, but you're speaking somebody else's verbiage. And yes, it does take a long time for that usually to occur, because remember, your brain's been mapped out. Mm-hmm. And so they've mapped out your audio cortex, you're cloned with another person or a machine, and so pretty soon the brain will bypass your cerebral cortex and be able to shoot out vocabulary that you have no intention of saying. And it's, I hate to say it, it's pretty common with most TIs.
In other
Evan.
Well, a very, very heavy debatation tonight. We had a very Darrison. Let's go to Terrace and look for the head of the pit.
Reporting from our Rock County Bureau at the Janesville Gazette. Thanks, Margot. Well, Wisconsin has officially joined 25 other states in a lawsuit against President Obama's health care reform law. Attorney General J.B. Van Hollen says Wisconsin is the latest state, including Iowa, Kansas, Maine, Ohio, and Wyoming, to join Florida's suit. The states claiming The Exorcist, Sa Untisracho, and Palais Bringritz by Health Urgent.
Yeah, it's a difficult title. It's a good day to die.
But I suppose it's because you had kind of a good day, and if you would have died, well, so be it. Is that it?
That's right. That's a good question. Have a sandwich, and let's go shopping.
Yeah.
Die hard.
That would have been your chosen title.
Well, it's about, it makes about as much sense.
Who likewise took a grim view of the voice's presence, subsequently interpreting everything I said through a lens of latent insanity. For example, I was part of a student TV station that broadcast news bulletins around the campus, and during an appointment, which was running very late, said, "I'm sorry, doctor, I've got to go, I'm reading the news at 6. Now, it's down in my medical records that Eleanor has delusions that she's a television news broadcaster. It was at this point that events began to rapidly overtake me. A hospital admission followed, the first of many. A diagnosis of schizophrenia came next. And then, worst of all, a toxic, tormenting sense of hopelessness, humiliation, and despair about myself and my prospects. But having been encouraged to see the voice, not as an experience, but as a symptom, my fear and resistance towards it intensified. Now, essentially, this represented taking an aggressive stance towards my own mind, a kind of psychic civil war. And in turn, this caused the number of voices to increase and grow progressively hostile and menacing. Helplessly and hopelessly, I began to retreat into this nightmarish inner world in which the voices were destined to become both my persecutors and my only perceived companions. They told me, for example, that if I proved myself worthy of their help, then they could change my life back to how it had been. And a series of increasingly bizarre tasks was set, a kind of labor of Hercules.
Brainwashing is repetition. So imagine you're sleeping for 8 hours. If the government has access to your brain for 8 hours, imagine what kind of brainwashing they can do on you. I mean, they have 8 hours of your time that you're not doing anything else, and they can just program your brain just like a computer to get you a mental health diagnosis, so that the other people in the population won't believe what you're saying. They'll be told like you're schizophrenic or you're crazy or things like that, to allow the harassment to continue. When in fact, it's a lot of times, a lot of the targets that I know, there are whistleblowers, drug whistleblowers, people who tried to do the right thing or file a lawsuit against somebody, or dated a cop, or dated the wrong person, per se, because it's the wrong person if they're going to throw you in a targeting program if you break up with them. But they've dated somebody who they've broken up with, and that person got upset, and all of a sudden they find themselves being targeted.
Victims of testing are left dysfunctional, and rarely are they allowed to work. The strategy is to mimic the dysfunctionality of the mental illnesses and drain the victim's resources so that they cannot find help or shielding. There is no other word for this program other than diabolical. So here's what the guys running the show are planning on spending their money on. And if you look at the commercial IT R&D on the number 2 line, it's $100 billion a year, a factor of 1 million further improvement in silicon, molecular, quantum, bio, and optical. Then we have a category called Beyond Human AI, whatever that means, automatics, robotics in the large, holodecks, ubiquitous multi-physics, hyperspectral sensors, land, sea, air, space, and then finally micro nanosats, GNC sensors, etc.
What?
Vitamin authentication. Look, I have one right here. Well, here, I'll let you hold it. Would you like to hold it?
I'll hold it.
Okay. So,
You guys see it?
this pill has a small chip inside of it with a switch. It also has what amounts to an inside-out potato battery. When you swallow it, the acids in your stomach serve as the electrolyte,
That's what I do.
and they power it up, and the switch goes on and off. And it creates an 18-bit ECG-like signal in your body, and essentially your entire body becomes your authentication token. Yes, this is true. Okay? Electronic tattoo. So I'm wearing one here on my arm.
Do we have
Here.
a camera to get a...
This is a developmental system made by MC10, and it has an antenna and some sensors embedded in it. And what we plan to do is work with them to advance a tattoo that could be used for authentication. Now, the medical the medical application.
Does Google now know everything I do and everywhere I go? Because, let's face it, we like you guys, but you're from Google.
Just give it.
So this is basically what's going on in your cells right now. These are different fibers assembling, disassembling your cells. This is a molecular machine that walks around in your cells right now. It's called a kinesin and transports things. So for example, when things want to move around your cells, they don't just float around randomly. They actually actively moved around with little machines, little robots, nanobots that power your cells. What you see here is actually an amazing machine coming out of these little pores, which actually assembles other machines. This is like the factory floor of your cells. It's called a ribosome. It reads your RNA. RNA is...
You say in your book that mind control slaves were permitted any drug except marijuana. Why? It's an excellent question. The effects of marijuana on the brain are not conducive to mind control.
It doesn't mean you can't be traumatized and put under mind control. It just means it screws up the programming.
Because it actually opens neuron pathways in the brain. It expands thought. I'm not going to stand here and speak pro-marijuana because...
No, because somebody be putting it in my car and popping me for it.
It's, you asked a good question. So they can control my emotions.
Yes.
How do they do that? Well, if you put a person under a functional MRI, which most people know about that technology, you can see the points of the brain that light up and classify each emotional state. You can tell if that person is an alcoholic, or that person is schizophrenic, or that person feels pleasure or pain, happiness, sadness, and etc. throughout all the emotions. Now, what people don't know is you can induce those sets, it's called an emotional signal cluster, onto other human beings. So literally copying what another person is feeling and those emotions onto you.
When one examines the evidence,
and steps back to take in the entire picture, there can be no doubt that the vast majority of human beings live their lives quite literally in a socially and biologically induced trance. And it is due to this trance-like state of the people that we now find the world in such a degraded state. Therefore, the solution becomes clear. Mankind must awaken.
I'm sorry.
Wipe the drool.
I was in a trance.
Yeah, wipe the drool there.
And there are actually several technologies, there are at least 4 different technologies that can pipe voices into the human head that only that person will hear.
You've had a rough year. You've had a year that would test a lot of people. Illness in the family. A breakup. This spasm of publicity about what happened from Mexico to London.
It was pretty rough. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of weird. Ah, weird. Hello. Oh my goodness. Hello. Ew. Strong Brittany. Yeah, it was a weird. Ew. I'm embarrassed. Can we stop?
In covertly recorded off-air transmissions from the Bush-Clinton presidential election campaign in the 1990s, we can see that Bill Clinton was nothing more than a puppet to the puppet masters which placed him in the White House. Bill Clinton's demeanor seems to be similar to a person who is under a hypnotic trance.
You probably heard about the voice of God inside your head. Is it real? Absolutely. You can hear the handlers or mind prison guards inside your skull as clearly as a cell phone call. This is the synthetic telepathy that the CIA has been working on for decades.
Is this the stuff, voices in the head and things like that?
Yes.
We've run into a few people that claim they got voices in their heads, they sleep inside tinfoil boxes, they do a lot of crazy things, it seems. But when they talk to us, they seem totally normal. They seem totally sane. Are these people crazy, or is the government doing this to them?
The government's doing this to them.
Voices are very easy. And it isn't people imagining voices, they physically hear them. They physically hear, as I'm talking to you, my voice isn't inside your brain. My voice goes no further than an inch into your ear, no further at all. It's the electrical signal that makes you interpret how I sound. And once you've got this electrical signal, which can be a chip or lots of things, you can physically make people hear voices, certain voices, and it can be any conversation, and it can be anybody you want to hear. It can be a soft, angelic voice, it can be a god, it can be something that scares you like a devil. It could be anything.
And then I'd go down the road and talk to somebody else, and they would continue the conversation because it was that same energy speaking through these people that it had hacked into. So it's an intelligent life that literally can hack into people, and it can use them as their puppets. What it does essentially, it puts you or your soul energy in a sort of box inside you where it feeds off of it, and it stays in your body and expresses. It's why we have so many murderers, child molesters, and things like that out there.
18 fighter jets are spending about as much as 20 and ready to assist the 100 deployed over the amount needed. Now, it did depend that how the NOLAN remerges RN, while the university or the UN mission as whole received support from all batteries in the hues of the garbins of today. Excuse me. I'll hand it back to you.
Barack Obama retaking the oath of office. Chief Justice Roberts, with reporters present, administering the oath, getting the words right, unlike me this time, launched a high-profile bid to be named Secretary of State, Secretary of State Clinton's old Senate seat. Candy will continue to work her source.
Better, because I'm a truth machine. Go ahead.
IS.
II is not an answer. Don't give me baloney.
I had a little bit.
Just pay attention. Listen to me. You're a big baby. I'm going to go back to you, sir. I want you to tell me about this cousin, Stephanie.
What?
Make a beeline for the brain as soon as they are inhaled. Too big to pass back through the blood-brain barrier, they become trapped there. Nature.com, January 5th, 2004. Once nanoparticulates have sufficient control over a host body, they can then be remotely controlled to work as a GPS tracking device to inflict physical pain and disease, to influence emotional states, to cause memory lapses, to read brain patterns, and even to remotely influence thoughts. Scientists working at the University of Southern California have created an artificial memory system that allows thoughts, memories, and learned behavior to be transferred from one brain to another. Using nanoparticles and a magnetic field, University of Buffalo scientists have been able to make worms move in any direction they dictated simply by heating clusters of nanoparticles inside them. These fibers contain nanocomponents which construct and install nanoimplants, which the aggregate of the constitutes what is commonly known as a biological application programming interface, allowing for complete monitoring and control of all body and mind function in a given host, you and everyone on the entire planet, or plant. Here is a payload. The zoom is, I think, 1/200th. Another. These are the deliveries through our blood membranes. These are in all of us, all our children, everyone.
And it works in reverse. As creepy as this may sound, it works in reverse as well. Control panel stalkers are able to see any images originating in the target individual's mind, both actual images and fictional images. And by actual images, I mean, like literally, they can see what I see out of my own two eyes. They can see what I'm looking at out of my own two eyes through this image induction technology. But they can also see fictional images. So any thoughts of images that are in my mind. So if I'm thinking about something in my memory, something that happened several years ago, and I have an image of that in my mind, then they can actually see that too. Or if I'm imagining something, there's an image that I'm imagining in my mind, they can actually see that too. And I know that sounds very science fiction, very crazy, but again, look at Dr. Robert Duncan's book, you'll see that it's not.
This may be the most amazing picture you'll ever see in your life. This is a Phase 2 subject with a nano camera in the left eye, only viewable with the proper wavelength of black light. Everyone on the planet has a basic set of nano implants that allows them to be tracked and mind controlled on demand. People who contract what I call Phase 2 will have additional implants that allows them to be body controlled as well as whole host of other functions. Your body is turned into a robot against your knowledge and against your will. The aggregate of these nano implants constitutes what is commonly known as biological application programming interface. This camera is too small and can't be seen, but it can be felt. Some more thoughts and information on the ocular nano implants are available. The most sinister plan. Nanobots are being sprayed on humans for mass mind control. One of the most sinister and difficult to fathom conspiracy theories I've ever come across posits that nanobots are being sprayed on us all to install bio-APIs, biometric application programming interfaces, which basically allow for the mental and emotional remote control of humanity.
And this fungus is, first, if you want to look at it, it's airborne. It's not a single fiber here and there. It is glowing under UV light. So if you take a UV lamp at night, you can see those fibers airborne. And there are billions of them. Not every night, but every now and then. You can see them fly around. And these fibers, this fungus, is infecting the human body. And with 95% or 99% of the people, nothing special happens. They're just embedded somewhere, and your biology is keeping the fungus population low in your body. They just function as a plasmonic antenna to send out a signal, but you don't get sick from it. You don't get ill. No visible symptoms. So we would guess 100% of the population in Europe is infected. It's not a big deal. It's not dangerous, as long as the body can handle these things. Some of the people cannot handle it. And then the mycelium is starting to grow within the body and starting to multiply. And at a certain point, they are extracted via the skin. And you can see that they have this ability to collect colors. You have blue Morgellons and you have red Morgellons. And nobody knows where these colors come from because they are of technical origin. It's not a natural substance. So you can see them when the skin is opening. You can see them under the microscope if you make a blood analysis. You can see that the blood is infected. And you can let them grow artificially in a Petri dish. And if you look at them, you see they're a little bit more complex than a simple fungus. They have kind of organs inside. They have little red stem cells of an unknown species that are self-replicating as well. And apparently they produce other structure. This looks like a sporing body. It's like the unit where the mycelium at a certain point is forming a mushroom, a fruiting body. And then from the fruiting body you would expect the spores for the next generation, if this is a mushroom, if this is a fungus. So this seems to be the containment for the spores, because if you put this into the Petri dish, you can see the next generation growing.
So the targeted individuals aren't crazy after all. Okay, doctor, to deliver this, how do they get into your head? I've heard of these Gwen towers. They allegedly were used before, and now they claim that they're not used for anything.
They do match up with the properties and necessary capabilities. They easily could be broadcasting across the country messages to people and causing them extreme pain.
It's you can see if you look into the military domain, they use it for radar range enhancement, for turning the sky into optical lenses and optical mirror setup. You call it horizontal drift plasma antennas and columnar focal lenses, so that they can play with electromagnetic signals and radar signals by turning the entire air, the particulate plasma they bring out, into a controllable technical unit to direct and redirect all sorts of signals. This is part of the rocket shield in the military domain.
HAARP was built in 1991. It's a phased array. It has a lot of the capabilities. There are at least 20 of these phased arrays around the world. And the first person that I could track back, assuming it was a real TI, was 1962. And that person wrote a book. And, you know, there weren't many TIs back then, but it sounded like a real TI. We didn't have satellites back then.
Really?
Yeah.
So you're saying...
So I'm saying it's an integrated, multimodal system, and the satellites may be a backup for the ground-based systems. A lot of these ground-based systems, they're called over-the-horizon radar, and it means anything below the ionospheric level, which is, you know, out there. It's, the signal will bounce off. And so it allows you to look over the Earth to the other side. And we use this to look for nuclear weapons being launched from Russia on China and such. But it allows you to look over the other side of the world, and it's like a mirror. So yes, it could get you anywhere.
Electronic spin resonance. This is the secret sauce that conspiracy kills to keep secret. Notice that there are no ESR machines in hospitals. Why? Because it would become immediately obvious how easy it is to read body electricity from radar. These are brainwaves at a distance. The basic concept is simple and very analogous to the way magnetic resonance imaging works, or MRIs. It works on manipulating spin and gyro frequency of electrons. Now this goes on to say right here that the arrow intersection points is pure noise to everyone else except the targeted individual who hear syllables of the waves through the pulsings of the gigahertz pulses through the wall radars. Now, here's a very good article that explains how HAARP works with the ionosphere to bounce waves off of for mind control. And it's also to note that geoengineering practices have now been effectively able to lower the ionosphere with a false ionosphere as low as 15 to 20,000 feet to bounce their signals off of. And this is one of the reasons for geoengineering. So the ionosphere is 80 to 300 miles up. It's composed of several layers of incomplete, electrically unbalanced molecular ions that have been torn apart by the sun's radiation in a process called ionization. Ham radio operators have long known that the ionosphere can act like a mirror for radio signals, especially at night when the atmosphere is calmer. Scientists and military groups have been using various layers of the ionosphere to create the aforementioned large bubbles or domes of superheated plasma to reflect transmissions all the way around the Earth in 2 or 3 hops. They have also found that the plasma dome collapses when the heating signal is turned off, which effectively creates a downward pressure or gravity wave as cold air rushes into the void left behind. Gravity waves can be used to steer the jet stream or crush the excess moisture out of developing hurricanes or storms with tornado potential. Ionospheric heaters are big, expensive antenna arrays that have traditionally been located near the Earth's poles, which later installations and new strategies located near the equator. They are increasingly being replaced by instruments mounted on ships or in smaller ground-based regional stations around the globe. Many ionospheric heater experiments have emphasized both ELF, extremely low frequency, and VLF, very low frequency ranges, which just happens to resonate with human brainwaves on Earth's natural Schumann resonance frequency. Now, isn't that interesting?
The second one, aluminum and manganese oxide. By the way, barium strontium titanate is produced in industrial spray pyrolysis at 750 to 600 degree flame temperature, which is identical with the flame temperature within normal jet engines. Aluminum oxide is also produced by spray pyrolysis by temperatures of 1,700 degrees. This is afterburner technology. And afterburner technology in the military domain is utilizing aluminum fuel. So the aluminum is already contained inside the fuel.
This is from an article from Dane Wigginton at geoengineeringwatch.org, one of the foremost experts on climate engineering, weather modification, geoengineering. Quote, in one form or another, climate engineering, also known as geoengineering or solar radiation management, can be connected to the vast majority of unfolding environmental catastrophes and the endless list of now epidemic human diseases around the world. There is a mountain of data to prove the global climate engineering assault has been going on for over 6 decades. A recently posed 750-page congressional report from 1978 outlined the ongoing global climate engineering insanity as of that date and confirmed the programs had already been going on for 30 years. 30 years before the report of 1978. Back to the article, a quote, our government is doing their best to be sure the public does not wake up to the toxic atmospheric spraying. Gag orders have just been placed on all National Weather Service employees and all National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration personnel. Not only has the entire climate system been derailed, the entire planet has now been irreparably contaminated with highly toxic heavy metals that are consistently sprayed in the skies as part of what is termed solar radiation management. The most prevalent of these heavy metals are aluminum and barium. So this coincides exactly with what Dr. Robert Duncan just said of his first known targeted individuals from 1976. We know they've been spraying the skies with aluminum and barium and climate modification since around that time as well.
People say the government is up there in airplanes spraying all kinds of chemicals to change or manipulate the weather, leaving what you see there, and they call that a chemtrail.
This is of interest not just in this country, but European countries and frankly all over the world. A lot of folks interested in it.
We take geoengineering to mean deliberate, large-scale intervention in the Earth's system. The little picture is from a nanofabrication study, which shows you can make very high quality and do this in just a jet in a very simple way. Aerosol geoengineering looks like it is so cheap that the cost is basically not going to be an issue.
Because nanoparticulates are potentially self-replicating, the cost of producing them is actually quite negligible. As for the question as to why the perpetrators would be spraying themselves, well, that answer is in fact a very simple one. These people want transhumanism. In fact, when one truly considers the transhumanist agenda and it begins to sink in that chemtrails seem to consist of nanoparticulates or smart dust, then the last piece of the puzzle falls snugly into place. And it is far from inconceivable that were the global population to be infused with programmable nanoparticulates, then when these tiny machines are switched on, They will simply do what they are programmed to do, and that what this may be may also be largely due to what other genetic codes have first been introduced into the host.
And the other, just to function in a technical environment. And then an accident happened. The accident was that this program they introduced into the subconsciousness took over control. And this is what is happening with transhumanism. This is exactly the trap that is. We are inspired by them to enter the same trap. And we are not inspired by the demons, we are inspired by the AI that has nothing else than a running program to invade planets and to assimilate the biology for only one purpose, to suck out life force to survive.
Them are aware of this, and they're aware of this substance, and that the government is using it to try to make also synthetic things. That's where you have the whole transhumanism, where they're trying to make robots that act just like us. And it's
also pushing this energy into the earth itself.
They're pushing this energy into the earth itself also, and into the water. That's the pollution of the water. Everybody knows that the human body is made mostly up of water. Well, it's programmable. Water's programmable. The thing is if you mess with the water and pollute the water, and then the people drink that, or it rains down, or they swim in it, or they get in it, obviously, it has an effect on them, and lots of different effects on them. So they're trying to do is they're trying to pretty much pollute everybody in the world to where they don't know what's going on anymore, even the few awakened one, and they need that. They need to absorb these negative emotions out of the children. And then I remember that I could hear them speaking, and they were going to take this energy and they were going to put it on in food. They were going to throw this dark energy on food. So whoever eats the food would also they would be charmed, and they would be energetically, parasitically linked, and they would be depressed and all sorts of. This energy works on the negative emotions. It absorbs it. It likes it. I've survived a lot of things, you know. People look at me and they would never ever realize what I've been through, and I don't even want to explain what I've been through, but I can tell you this, that throughout everything that I survived, it's because I remembered love. And there was days where I didn't have anything, and I was in the worst situation. I was just a little child, and I would wake up and I'd look at the sun every morning, and I just have so much heart love and be so happy and smiling. A person would be like, why are you smiling? And you're not allowed to smile. Why do you smile? And I would explain to them, because I feel love, and that is very, very important to me. All this time I think I have survived because of the fact that my heart is open, and I really do care about people, and I really, really, really see that others, the really sad thing, people aren't working from their heart. They're working from their ego or from other things, and it messes them up. And if everybody would just start opening their hearts and being kind and compassionate and caring, it's not no religion to do those things. It's something normal that we have forgot to do. If we do those more often, the world would be a much better place for us and our children.
It's not about replacing people. It will never work. We need to replace the game. And if we all understand the game, we can just say, hey, stupid game, let's let go of it. And we can stop playing these thing that basically is nothing else than being afraid of self-responsibility. And I think we are at the point in history where every single individual should master that, to regain self-responsibility, and then we will not need a government. It's not about changing the government, because the entire concept of governments, having somebody to control, is demonic. We enter a world of abundance, and this can only work if also the psychology of the scarcity is leaving. If we let go of this and start to trust the other cycle of, I know that there's enough of everybody. This is why I let go everything I don't need in this moment and share it with other people. And they gain trust in the thought that there really is enough for everybody. And this is also self-strengthening. And at the moment we are kind of diving through the hole of the needle, leaving one system, entering the other one. It's a process that is going to take place during the next 3 to 5 years. And when we are through, nothing is going to be the same on this planet. The ones who survive this are the ones who collect the spirit and swim in front of the wave.
After thousands of people complained something was new, something was wrong, the Centers for Disease Control now says it will launch an investigation into a strange new skin condition, no known causes.
This morning in Health Watch, Morgellons, a mystery illness that can make people feel like their skin's crawling.
It is a mystery straight out of the X-Files, but those who suffer from it will tell you it's painfully real.
Imagine feeling like your skin is literally crawling, that you're tormented at all hours. You can't even think straight. The condition is driving you.
People around the world are developing lesions on their skin that ooze and produce fibers. This is known as Morgellons syndrome. Tissue samples cultured from ordinary people without this ailment contain and grow the very same fibers. When these fibers are cultured, they produce colonies of filaments. You can see the extension filaments. And these colonies continue to grow and reproduce, branching out into more filaments and more colonies. The filament cultures can be grown from saliva samples, tissue from the skin, mucus, urine, blood, from animals and people, regardless of the presence of the Morgellons condition. So where do these fibers or filaments come from? Airborne environmental samples that were collected by Clifford Carnicom in 2000, the year 2000, gathered at high altitude on a mountain in New Mexico, showed the presence of those fibers, whose structure matches exactly the tubular filaments showing up in our blood, tissues, and skin. Additionally, the samples collected by Mr. Carnicom showed what he calls, and what's called in biology, desiccated erythrocytes. This is a multisyllabic term, but it means dried red blood cells. So, why are dried red blood cells in the air?
Okay. The next thing that you can find in environmental monitoring are Morgellons. Yeah. If you look at the things the vaccination is containing, starting with mercury, this is pure poison. Starting with chelates that pull out copper from your body, you start realizing that there's a plan behind it. And if you look at this, you can find all the things connected to the Morgellons disease. You find like large area self-assembled plasmonic photonic crystals. If you go into this publication, you find these hexagonal forms. And if you look for the function, actually this is a thing that is collecting a radio signal and turning the radio frequency into DNA readable light impulses within the body. So this is the reading unit. If you look down there, you have photonic crystal fibers. If you look what they do, it's normally they talk about carbon nanotubes filled with these colors, with these quantum dot chemistry. And the function is to collect light processed by the DNA and turn it into a readable signal. Exactly what Cara St. Louis described in her novel. Now there are a few more aspects of this Morgellon disease that are a little bit strange. Morgellon victims have this sensation of insects crawling through their body. It's sometimes the disease is called delusional parasitosis. And the doctors say this is pure madness, and normally what they give is psychopharmaca. I guess to get the people quiet.
I did feel it crawling through, like it was trying to get out of my body after that. It was crawling. I would see my skin would move. It would move everywhere I had where it come down to my mouth. It was trying to get out of my body. I would even see it sometimes go right across my eye, some of it. It was trying to get out of my body after that, and it wasn't getting the energy from me, so it was dying. Okay, so I do believe that's somewhat nanotech, and that it lives off of the body's energy, bioelectric energy.
Okay, we're going to do the grape juice test here. It's like a wine test. You can use wine also, red wine. And it's the Morgellon test, Morgellons. And we got rubbing alcohol here. We're going to use that too. So when my mom here spits this grape juice on this plate here, you're going to see a lot of little creatures wiggling around in there. Okay, so go ahead. We're going to do this. Fun stuff, I'm telling you. Okay, I'll be back in 2 minutes and we'll see what we get. Get ready to spit it on that plate there. Go ahead. Oh, that's attractive. Oh, nice. Oh my God, look at that crap. And that's not in the grape juice, by the way. We already did that test. This stuff is fibers and whatnot. Okay, go ahead. We're going to pour some little bit of rubbing alcohol. It's going to bring these things to screaming. Now you can really see them.
Yeah, I know you can see
them. No. Oh yeah, that's so funny. So I'm in the Twilight Zone as usual.
A whole string of them.
Oh God, this is even worse. We did it the first time and it was bad, but this is even worse.
Yeah, you can see what it does. What you have inside of you.
Well, we all have this, folks, so the spraying is happening. It's over our heads today, as usual.
Each of them has a life expectancy of up to 100 years in the environment. They need no battery or power source externally because they are powered by the electromagnetic radiation in the air that we breathe.
I'm going to tape this time. And so this is what we did before. This is what this is. This is the wine spit test where you rinse your mouth out and then you take grape juice and you hold it in your mouth and you spit it out into a petri dish. Well, what we did is we used the zeolite, the zeoforce. This stuff says it cages this stuff stuff that's in these chemtrails that's in our bodies. Okay, so then now Chris is just going to pour in a little bit of that little tiny bit of the 91% alcohol. Watch, the stuff is alive. Watch what happens. Pour some in, just a little. Watch. Look. Look what it does.
Now you can film it up close.
Oh yeah.
That's totally freaking...
Is that freaking freaky? This is in every single one of us. This is spookier and weirder than I even want to go there.
If you look at those particles, this is how they look like under the microscope. The particle form is called a whisker. It looks like a star, and it has this special ability to attract electrons and to hold them. So this is the function of these particulate plasma in the military domain. The barium strontium titanate can be activated to spit out electrons, and the aluminum oxide is carrying them for a long time. And this is attracting other flies to get infected with this fungus. So this is something this family loves to do. Now, I would expect this family, if it attacks humans, to extract human DNA and to form fruiting bodies in the form of a human embryo, because this is within the biology of this fungus family. But it is bringing in red stem cells. And the morphogenesis of the fruiting body is pretty close to a human embryo. But there are certain differences and there are certain properties of this form that are not human. And especially one thing is these embryo-shaped things. They don't have legs, but they end like this at the end, more like a... Yeah, let's say like an insect, and they have only one eye in the middle of the head. And this eye is insect type, and this eye is glowing, and on top of the eye, on these insect-shaped things, you have these hexagonal structures that carry the spores. And so the question is, what type of species is carried by the morphogenesis of these pseudomorphic mushrooms, because it is not human. And the question is there a connection between the species and the thing that the Morgellon victims experience within themselves as crawling insects? And we were really lucky. We had the opportunity to work with one Morgellon victim that had remote viewing capacities and had the ability to visualize those creatures within his body. And luckily he was quite talented in painting. So I asked him to give me a few sketches. So he started to paint and he got better and better. And the last picture I got from him looked like this. So we have the spider form, but we have a quite highly developed face and a quite highly developed character. And he draw the eye in the middle, the one that is showing up in the morphogenesis of the mushroom, the pseudomorphic. And other things you find, now it's getting fringe, it's really getting fringe, is fragments of insect skin being extracted from a Morgellon victim. So something makes these, something from this disease is making insect parts or insects grow within the human body. Did I say co-opted insects when we had this NASA paper? We're getting there. To understand what this is all about, at first sight this is a disease that should be cured. We worked on finding a remedy to cure Morgellons disease. It's easy. You don't even need to fight the Morgellons. You just need to re-establish a healthy environment within the human body. Take out the acids, take out the heavy metals, cure the function of the liver that is irritated by mercury and that is irritated by a disturbed candida environment. This is due to antibiotics. So this goes, in the medical domain, this goes back to vaccinations, to antibiotics, which is completely disturbing our system. And at the end of the line, the Morgellon is kind of trying to save us from all the poisons that are within us. Save us from the acids, save us from the heavy metals by containing them. This is why the body allows them to grow. So this is actually not a disease that is infecting us with bad intentions. Everybody's infected, but the one who has too much heavy metals in the system will show symptoms because he will allow these fungus to replicate and suck in all these heavy metals.
Interviewed before, and I feel honored that she's here. Her name is Julian McKinney. She is had an extensive career in the U.S. Army as an area intelligence case officer until 1990. Upon her return to civilian life, Julian became a member of the Association of the National Security Alumni. That is an organization of former intelligence officers dedicated to exposing excesses by the U.S. intelligence services. Julian became the director of the Electronics Surveillance Project under their auspices. You've been following this for years and years and years. Is there any way that you can give our listeners a kind of an idea of how widespread this problem is in terms of numbers in our country and compared to maybe overseas?
Well, I would say that the persons who have realized what's going on are just a drop in the bucket. The persons whom I have seen being targeted are completely unaware of what's happening. So those who are complaining of this are, as I said, a tip of the iceberg. I would say this is probably very, very widespread. But I can't, under the circumstances, come up with any figures. Many thousands, no doubt, are involved. But I would say that the bulk of those are running to their doctors and taking totally unnecessary prescription drugs to cure ailments that, in fact, don't exist.
After a government protocol now applied to the general civilian population?
It's difficult to pinpoint everything at this stage on the U.S. government exclusively because these are global operations.
Okay.
The pattern, the protocols are virtually identical on a global scale. So someone is overseeing the entire activity. The government obviously is complicit because otherwise these operations would not be allowed to exist. Congress recognizes that these weapons systems exist and funds them, and knows as a result of appropriate briefings what the bioeffects can be, yet they have passed no legislation prohibiting their use under unconstrained experimental circumstances. That's number one. Number two, given that these systems draw on existing power grids, it would be necessary for the FCC as a minimum and the Department of Energy as a minimum to have some oversight and control over what is going on. So obviously, with Congress, the FDA, and the Department of Energy, the FCC and the Department of Energy are knowledgeable and yet unwilling to do anything about it. So there is complicity, but the question is, whose bidding is the U.S. government allowing these operations to take place?
First of all, why are they doing it? Is it for basically a blanket statement controlling the population, and what do they do with this information once they get it?
I don't think they do anything with the information once they get it, other than to establish a harassment protocol, which will follow that targeted individual for the rest of his or her life. That person be put under surveillance, so that their personality traits, their capacity to interrelate with people, their capacity for corruption or non-corruption, that seems to be a critical point, and even their religion factors into it. Following a period of harassment, they are singled out for preliminary stages of harassment, which would include gang stalking, entry of their private homes and apartments, followed by gradually intensified and ultimately extremely intensified electronic harassment. This is a pattern that is unfolded over and over and over. And it would appear that those being targeted are simply objects who I see as ultimately being disposable. In other words, I think that once full control is established over a major percentage of the population, and enough of the population is silenced and unwilling to stick their necks out, that we inevitably would be heading toward a Holocaust. There are no laws prohibiting experimentation with these weapon systems. You're talking to the wrong people. They're constantly, targets are constantly monitored, and if they respond emotionally to a particular trigger, that will be built into the protocol. If the target displays a certain sense of guilt or embarrassment about a subject, that will be built into the protocol. It's an ongoing process.
What I was getting at was we never got to the point where if you mentioned something about a religious group that may be targeted.
Well,
and what did you mean by that?
The way I don't. Let me put it this way: I'm not anxious to start a religious war. I have found over the years that the persons involved, both in gang stalking, I've made it a point to get to know these people. I've had to necessarily. I'm not the type to.
You're talking about the perpetrators or the targets?
Perpetrators.
Okay.
As well as I've been drawing distinctions, and what I have found is that the perpetrators appear to belong predominantly to one particular religion, whereas the targeted individuals do not belong predominantly to that particular religion.
And what is the particular religion of the perpetrators?
Right. So at this stage, again, I'm not particularly enthused about the idea of starting a religious war, and I have challenged other.
Maybe.
There is a religious influence, but that's not to say that these people aren't just being used as puppets by some broader interest.
Are there citizens of this country that are being abused with this technology?
Worse than abused, that's a light word. They're being tortured.
So here's a sampling of the many names this single weapon system has gone under. Psi weapons, non-lethal weapons, directed energy weapons, cognitive modeling influencers, voice of God weapons, synthetic telepathy, EEG cloning, EEG heterodyning, neurotelemetry, biotelemetry, scalar weapons, behavioral biophysics, microwave weapons, mind control, bioenergetics, neuron fluencing, mind meld, remote interrogations, remote hypnotic intracerebral control neuralizer, RHIC, EDOM, telesuggestion, parapsychology, radiofrequency weapons, psychotronics, radionics, telecybernetics, bioelectromagnetics, non-thermal effects research, remote brain wave monitoring, psychic spying, stealth radar, microwave interferometry, high-frequency pulsed ELF waves, thought reader radar, informational weapons, and the list goes on for another 2 pages. Through my protected sources, I was told the government weapons testers look for brainwaves that show 3 traits they want. One is amplification factor of neurons often found in dopamine excessive brains. This group traditionally has been known to exhibit psychosis. The other brain entrainment inducibility indicative of a high susceptibility to hypnosis. The third is the uniqueness of the brainwaves to add to the databases, which increases the effectiveness of TAMI for other people. Other factors for target selection include the ease of discrediting and isolating the victim. Of course, being a disobedient politician or a government whistleblower will increase your chances of being thrust into the virtual hell and beginning your journey into madness.
And if you put the two together, this goes beyond the novel. You get a read-write unit. I can take one person, make him angry, read out his anger, digitize it, put it on an antenna, and address 100 people that are not angry. And if they have this biology within their system, they will feel exactly the same experience of anger that I read out from the single person. So, what do I need? Do I need an Arabic Spring? Easy. Just introduce some anger to the system. Yeah, so this is basically the possibilities that lie within a read-write unit, like a tape recorder. Record the human experience, the overall human experience of a human, and you can tell by the colors what this includes. Blue is the light that we process for thinking, and red is the light we process for sexuality. So they control our egos, they control our minds, and they control our sexuality.
Touchless torture devices. History. There was a patent that I will keep referring to throughout this book because of the importance of the work. In 1974, Robert Malek, an employee of Dorn and Mogollon, a major defense subcontractor and radar design, now owned by EDO Corporation, an even larger all-defense contractor in electronic warfare, invented a fairly simple radar device that could read whole-brain electrical activity at a large distance. It has the major advantages of no wires and full-brain electrical activity analysis, not just points on the skull surface. He discovered and perfected a way to use some simple electromagnetic oscillations anywhere from 100 megahertz to 40 gigahertz to read brain waves by illuminating the brain and its electrical conductance, then reading the return signal. The imaging method observes the changes of frequency resonances, amplitude, and phase, which represent the states of neuron depolarization throughout the brain. TAMI, Thought Amplifier and Mind Interface. But more profoundly, he discovered that he could influence brain waves if precisely timed with a return training signal. He had no idea that at this moment in history, he had accidentally destroyed democracy as we envision it. The military and surveillance community immediately picked up on the patent and within 2 years had reprogrammed their communications and surveillance satellites and terrestrial phased arrays with the new concepts. So in 1976, on the bicentennial of this great nation, a system called TAMI was born. A more invasive Big Brother technology came about before George Orwell's prediction in 1984.
some of those devices which would have enabled the CIA to use this poison for,
We have indeed.
for killing people.
The round thing at the top is obviously the sight. It works by electricity. There's a battery in the handle.
Does the target know that he's been hit and about to die?
A special one was developed which potentially would be able to enter the target without perception.
As a murder instrument, that's about as efficient as you can get, isn't it?
It is a weapon, a very serious weapon.
I've actually been induced to have panic attacks on 2 separate occasions. This is before I realized I was a targeted individual. I shouldn't say panic attacks, what I thought were panic attacks. Basically, my heart rates just started speeding up very, very rapidly. It was just going at full blast. And so it kind of freaked me out. I thought I was actually having a heart attack. And so I went to the hospital. I had the ambulance called. I was at work. I had the ambulance called to my job. They took me to the hospital. And they said, oh, nothing's wrong. Everything's normal. Your EKG is just fine. And I'm thinking, well, how can my EKG be fine? Because my heart rate was going 90 miles an hour, before you got here. And so I just resolved that I was having panic attacks. But now I know a little bit more about the technology. I realized that I was not having panic attacks. And this is kind of when the harassment first started, and that this was just part of the game. It was
peace. Where the microwave weapons where they can...
Well, the microwave weapons can cause heart attacks, and people that have some sort of defect in their heart and can cause strokes. And this was written about by the U.S. Air Force, talking about the Russians are developing this. We're way ahead of them. So, it's all a scam just so they can get more money from Congress. But Dr. Fred Bell, after he did an interview with Joseph Ventura, dropped dead 24 hours later from a heart attack. And, this has been written about. This is actually old news. 1970s, I found in Russian literature, talk about you can spook or scare someone to death.
With another vibration that's from the same time or from, a similar frequency, and they gradually will make the vibration get lower and lower and lower. Extremely low frequencies is when you're in panic and you're freaking out and you're thinking all kinds of nasty shit. Not nasty like sexual nasty, but nasty as in like evil nasty. And that's not okay. If you are a targeted individual, do not let these motherfuckers convince you that you're a bad person.
So from Dr. Robert Duncan's book, Matrix Deciphered, he goes into tinnitus, the buzzing ears, and says, another way to estimate how many people might be on the Mind network is to look at the rate of tinnitus in the population. How many people here have a very high-pitched square wave tinny sound once in a while? I scoured the medical research in this area, and none of it satisfactorily explains the neurological and biophysical process that give rise to this kind of tinnitus as described by government torture projects and the general populace. Tinnitus affects 17% of the general population. 17% of the U.S. population is 50 million people. The U.S. Mind Control Network is rumored as of 1985 to be able to handle 25 million people. In fact, when the cases of tinnitus that have real physical causes are removed from those stats, it matches exactly. With a potential influence over 25 million people, all public opinions and elections could be easily manipulated. This was written back in 2005 or 2006.
Or ice water, or regular water, or tap water.
All right, Beatrice. There was no alien. Flash of light you saw in the sky was not a UFO. Swamp gas from a weather balloon was trapped in the thermal pocket and refracted the light from it.
Well, wait a minute. So you just flash that thing, it erases our memory, and you just make up a new one?
Standard issue knowledge.
Once the rays reach the hippocampus, it disrupts the connection between the cells and the nerve endings, causing people to forget a specific memory or amount of time.
The electronic dissolution of memory removes selective memories of old lovers if they were too painful. The CIA program EDOM has this capability. By forcing memory recalls of the memories to be erased, EDOMs can track this neural circuits, mathematically represented by matrices in the cognitive model, and turn them off. When two minds are linked through TAMI, every thought is shared. The psychic attacker merely needs to blank their mind when a topic of thought occurs that they want to avoid. The U.S. shadow government has killed more people by keeping this technology secret than all previous U.S. wars since the beginning of this nation.
I mean, this is horrible. This is absolutely horrible, guys. And I would not wish this on even my worst enemy. It is such a frightening experience. Is subjected to a constant bout of noise that is never ending. It's designed to keep the target individual on edge. It happens at all times of the day, and it's exacerbated at nighttime. I mean, it's really, really bad at nighttime because the goal is to keep the target individual from getting sleep.
Memory probing. The EEG heterodyning practice attackers play the same game with all victims. They're able through two techniques to walk the victims back in time to think they have been linked in the victim since birth. Basically, they're going into their minds. Their vampires are going into the memory. Over time, this process is effective to get a complete profile of the person's life. It is a great way to inject a guilt signal. This forces memory recalls in conjunction with specific memory anchor. So if you feel guilty about some particular memory, those additional memories will surface. This gets into psychic vampiring or EEG cloning. EEG cloning means to copy someone else's brainwaves onto another person. This discovery was made by Malak, allows us to be done wirelessly anywhere in the world. So they're able to layer our brains on top of others' brains and patterns into 3D. Psychically spying into each other's minds was an incredible feat. In order to cover up and not draw attention to mind reading radar, the whole field of psychic phenomena and paranormal psychology was invented to deceive the civilian populations of what was occurring. Unfortunately, due to the nature of this new weapon, many humans' minds are needed to create the database of specific brain data necessary to increase the effectiveness on a larger and larger population. These are referred to as the cataloging and cloning operations. In this context, cloning does not refer to human cloning, but EEG, three-dimensional cloning.
Life force of the earth. Yes, they're polluting the life force of the earth, and they're absorbing, they're like, that's the whole beehive thing. They are absorbing energy from the core of the earth like bees. That's the whole beehive thing that you hear all.
Bees are dying.
There you go. The way this energy works is the entities is like a beehive. And the earth is an energy source, and they're like bees to it. They go and collect, like a flower, let's say per se a flower, they go and collect the energy from that. And then they try to pollute it, and they're trying to change the polarities of the earth from positive to negative.
EEG heterodyning, or cyberborging. This is the hive mind. They are the collectives of people who share one common set of brainwaves. They are studying both the long-term effects of being in this kind of collective mind configuration and how to use it to control, spy through, disable, or kill a target. The emerging field which intersects at the physics of psychology is called psychophysics. The tool of psychophysicists are called psychotronics. Mr. Malak in '76 discovered he could influence brainwaves just as easily as reading them, so at the other extreme, a psychic warrior can EEG clone his brainwaves onto a target. Heterodyning is an engineering term which means to mix signals. After being run through the battery of torture tests, I can confirm what one of the researchers involved with mind control brags about in his paper is true. Quote, I can control every aspect of human mental functions at 450 megahertz. Mind, magnetically integrated neuron duplicator. This is one method to usurp a mind and create a higher order mind network, which has two sets of tools. One can grow virtual neurons to every human brain. Certainly hive minds with 2 to 6 people are being created and tested in the thousands of cells. Whether those cells are somehow connected to each other through a collective hive mind switchboard is also unknown. One could create a higher order mind from connecting all human minds together, a global brain. Has it been done? I know for certain that many people have been mapped and connected to the U.S. Mind Network. Whether that is just for current and future use as spy and control conduits, or whether this large collection of minds has been or is being integrated, is unknown to me.
Literally, in one moment, I'm just fine, and in the next moment, I'm extremely intensely hot. And I have like this tingling feeling all over, literally all over my body, where I've just been heating up, almost like I'm cooking inside, like my insides are cooking. And I broke out in a sweat. And it only lasted for like a minute or two, but it leaves you so dizzy and disoriented and just out of it that, I mean, you're frightened. You are frightened and you're wondering, like, what in the world is going on with me?
Once the target brain, unbeknownst to them, has adapted and incorporated to the virtual network, an example being the modulated brain signals, anything can be done with their soul. Let's imagine if everyone has their own artificial mind model running all the time. A program composed of synaptic weighted matrices constantly growing with the person, basically a soul duplicate of pure information. Mind viral warfare. Simulated mind virus could be grown into anyone viewing virtual neurons and the self-organizing nature of biological neural networks. What this means is they're self-replicating. Once they get in, they start making more of themselves and cloning. It only requires more computing power to add unlimited scalability. This is how EEG cloning could be used as a full-scale weapon without requiring a real army behind it. Is there evidence that the mind virus exists? Yes. Here's my favorite, the voodoo dolls. Earlier, I facetiously joked that the psychic warfare unit in the Pentagon during the 1970s was probably located next to the voodoo doll warfare unit. It actually is in the same unit whose war room is nicknamed Hell. All involuntary human psychotronic weapons research projects report hot needles and flesh in various parts of their bodies as a type of practiced torture. Mind controllers turn themselves into voodoo dolls. They poke themselves with a dull needle, but the amplified feeling for the cloned target is perceived much more painfully. The psychic war room monitors countless people's EEG patterns and translates it into audible and visual digital information that can be viewed on a monitor. The agents in the movie Men in Black read the tabloids to get the real news. There's an interesting parallel to the truth once again. Tabloids will report on alien abductions. You now know how to translate and read between the lines. Alien abductions are the directed energy nervous system modulation experiments that the mainstream media is forbidden to touch. Basically, it's created in the mind. They don't physically journey there. Researcher links artificial intelligence, geoengineering, smart dust, and Morgellons to ETs. This is an article by Susan Ferguson just in the past few weeks, an excellent article. I'll be put in the show notes. German researcher Harold Kautz-Vella is one of those rare beings who can weave together both the spiritual, metaphysical, and the scientific. He started to look at the topics of AI, chemtrails, Morgellons, smart dust, and nanotechnologies while looking at environmental protection analysis and, quote, came across a number of substances that shouldn't have been in nature because they are 100% artificial and they are high-tech. And there is no other reason to have them in the environment apart from intent. And not the best one, let's put it that way, end quote. Referring to the list of semi-secretive technologies into the substances he found in the environment, he says, quote, if you root these substances back to what they are designed for, you come to transhumanistic technologies, which is the attempt to get an interface between artificial intelligence and biological. If you ask the transhumanists themselves, they'd always say they'd like to give humans better access to AI. And if you look into the technologies, It is always to the opposite way around. It's always giving the AI access to human in the sense of getting the human system controlled from the outside. Most of the people in the world are wrong when they think that AI is something that we, meaning humans on Earth, have developed. True to some extent, but there is a second type of AI that is much older and not of terrestrial origin that we are facing. Hard to prove, but it looks like the AI we are working on is seeded by these original extraterrestrial AI. It encompasses the chemical composition of chemtrails, demonic foundations, Morgellons disease, and sentient oil, otherwise known as black goo.
Now we need to understand, the second thing we need to understand is what is the function of the black goo. And to understand the function, you look at the chemistry. It is a mineral oil dotted with high amounts of alchemistic gold and iridium, which is precious metals in the M state, which is, it's not really explored. Some people say it's a type of antimatter that is far enough out of our reality to avoid a collision between matter and antimatter. Some people connect it with superconductive qualities. What we know is that gold and iridium in this state of matter is a very important component of biology. If you look at in DNA, you're kind of forming hollow spaces in the spiral, and you can fit these monoatomic precious metals exactly into the open space. And they kind of act as a biophoton attractor. The DNA itself is capturing the field energy, storing it and resending it out. But the gold and the iridium are attracting the photon onto the spot. So this is basically why we get old. The body is capable of producing M-state matter until we are 18 years old, and then we are losing it. And when the matter is gone, the M-state matter is gone out of our system, we disconnect from the morphic field, and we lose our shape and get old. This is why the Egyptian priests fed themselves with these M-state matter, and it's reported that they managed to get 800 years old, because this function was out of work.
I would say that the minds of society are closed off to the higher self, and their heart chakras are closed off to the higher source. And we are starting to live in a society where it's more robotic oriented or AI oriented. This just hasn't begun in this century, but that was a long time ago. It happened on other planets. This presence, it seems to be a presence that is very dark. I wouldn't say evil, because I don't believe in evil, but I would say it was a more of an advanced intelligence presence that absorbs energy for its survival, and it's done this to many previous planets. And this instant, Earth is in peril of the same thing that happened to the other planets. If you look above, I used to often tell people, you can tell what's going to happen to Earth by looking at the stars. You look at the barren planets, because it's happened to it before. They were all populated and very beautiful before all this began, actually.
When you're changing the energy or the polarities of the Earth, does that not mean that you're actually destroying Mother Nature?
You are destroying Mother Nature. This energy, it's in lower realms, and it wants to be in these realms. It needs energy to stay here. It constant energy, so it has to do that to stay here. Otherwise, if its energy source stops, it's pulled back down into the lower realms. So it has to do that. However, it's realized that this is not enough. That's why it's trying to go in higher realms by using the energy of humanity and trying to surfing up in higher realms with that.
Are you talking about the black goo?
Yes, I'm talking about the black goo.
Now, can you tell us what you know about the black goo, because you've experienced it directly?
Okay, what I know about the black goo is it started as I remember, I think my first memory of this is, first memory of the black goo would be when I was smaller, but this is probably the most, in my mind, the most deep or heart-touching memory I have is that I was in space and I could see this black goo or this black smoke encompassed Earth and all of the Milky Way system. It just like smoke encompassed it. And the same energy has went from planet to planet, absorbing all the life force out of it, to the very point that the planet is barren. And it's doing the same thing to Earth this instant. And people on Earth are in amnesia to what's happening. They don't understand what's happening. And they're incarnating over and over and over and being used as energy sources. And they're being used as energy sources, and if they try to literally go higher in vibration, or they start getting attacked by this presence, I'm not sure how to explain this presence in terms, in human words. It's something that I sense and see.
This oil is not only 50 years old, Scully, but its composition has been altered by exposure to radiation. A medium being used by some kind of alien creature that uses it to body jump.
The virus is extraterrestrial, been lying dormant underground in the form of an evolved pathogen. We know very little about it except that it was the original inhabitant of this planet.
A virus.
Told us it was biological warfare, a virus.
Plague?
Plague to end all plagues, Agent Mulder. A silent weapon for a quiet war.
Levels like this just don't appear in nature.
And now, another thing that becomes interesting when you look at the different types of the black goo, I titled as binary versus trinary life. The sensation of the black goo forms is different. One is full of empathy, you have a heart in there, and one is cold and empathy-free. What we need to realize is that there are two qualities. One quality is coming from inner Earth, and one quality is coming from outer space. And they feel completely different. The Falkland black goo is called sentient oil, because it has full empathy. If you're getting close to this oil, you're coming in a state of mind that is full of love and empathy. If you come into the vicinity of the meteorite black goo, your heart chakra dwindles to nothing, and you become an empathy-free asshole. So there are many, many things kind of that point to the thing that we have a little war between two different concepts of biology. One connected to alien black goo and to an alien species that is without heart energy, and one that is connected to our loving planet.
I would say I'm still trying to figure out about it. It could be advanced AI, from what I understand. It's emotionless. It has no empathy. It has no feelings. It doesn't care. It just simply absorbs energy and uses it for its purposes needed. Now, the reason for absorbing energy is it can go to higher realms. This is how the realms work. The less energy, the lower realms. The higher the energy, the higher the realms. Now, what it has done is it's been able to absorb energy and move into higher realms where it shouldn't be this instant. And whenever it's using humanity partly for that. I feel like humanity is locked up on Earth, and they're being used for energy sources for this to also, not only has it taken over planets and absorbed the energy from planets, I feel it's trying to go into the higher realms also to also pretty much wreak havoc on all the higher realms.
Human beings only use 10% of the brain's capacity. Imagine if we could access 100%. Interesting things begin to happen.
What happens when she reaches 100%?
I have no idea. have me.
What is she making? New generation computer, I presume.
The black goo is processing light as well, but it is processing it in the bidirectional form. So it is controlling consciousness and subconsciousness. This is what forming our way we receive, we look at reality. So the subconsciousness is a time reverse component of a bidirectional signal. So it's doing basically the same as the intelligence community, but it's taking another step to the black goo. And the black goo is connected to quantum computers based on black goo. We found 4 of them. One was in Rome, one was in the city of London, one was in an NS underground facility in the middle of Germany, in the area of Nordhausen. It is a facility where the V2 missiles were constructed. And it has officially, it has 1 layer of underground tunnels. And if you talk to people who have been in this facility 50 years ago, a few have survived this time, they talk about 3 layers and describe the facilities in the lower levels. And there's one of these black goo quantum computers in it, resembling artificial ley lines, like 1.50 meters in diameter, big pipes containing black goo. And from there you can connect the black goo to computer programs, inserting neurolinguistic programs. This is basically what happened to mankind. We have been natural once, and then suddenly you have concepts appearing in your mind like revenge. This is a neurolinguistic program that is causing only that we cannot stop killing each other. In nature it does not exist. You will never find an animal taking revenge. You can find a rival, yes, but no revenge. The word no is a demonic neurolinguistic program, because these entities know that we create our own reality by thinking. So they just introduced a new word that does not exist in nature to turn everything on the head. No more war. And the quantum physics is only reading more war, and it is manifesting more war. So all these neurolinguistic programs are inserted in certain computers, processing black goo. And there was one in Rome, one in Germany, one in the city of London, and one somewhere between Washington, D.C. and New York. And in the center of the entire thing, this is now the demonic agenda. In the center of the entire thing, we have a controlling unit, and this is this synthetic RNA that is sprayed. That is pure artificial intelligence. And if you look into the ancient scripts describing the demons, they say that actually they don't have individuality, that they have something within their species that is ruling them as like a central computer. And if you look at this, you can, again, this is not proven, but it makes a story. You can imagine this species starting to travel space, maybe leaving the women behind, and thinking about, with all the knowledge they had gathered, about a way to manipulate. First, they knew they had to take their collective subconsciousness with them to survive as a species. This is why they took black goo onto the journey. And the second thing is that they found possibilities to manipulate the black goo and to adopt the subconsciousness to the needs of space traveling. And this is where they stole the heart chakra. They removed the heart chakra from their biology.
Matter, hybrid, whatever, this is where the lines become blurred and you're like, okay, well, what's black goo, what's programmable matter, are they the same? But anyway, Here's Scarlett Johansson again with the black shit.
What is she doing? She's looking for energy and matter. And she's trying to connect with our computers.
NASA and Google partner up again to unveil a quantum computing leap. This is how the black goo is powering the computers. In an experiment, a quantum computer outperformed a conventional machine by 100 million times. The box is a D-Wave quantum computer. We see that's the size of a garden shed. Relies on fundamentally different principles than today's computers. D-Wave computer came up with an answer 100 million times faster than a conventional computer with a single core. The head of product engineering, Mr. Hartmut Nevin at Google, says a D-Wave does in a second what a computer with a single core does in 10,000 years. Imagine how much control they will have with these types of machines.
Transdimensional beings. And what I observe out of this point of view when I look at Morgellon disease, it looks like a higher dimensional being abusing humans to reproduce his own species. And before these pseudomorphic fruiting bodies leave the body, they extract enough biophotons from the forehead to ascend to a parallel dimension. And from then on, they're invisible. But they're still within the body. And this is controllable by radio frequencies without risking that it is triggered without anyone to want it being triggered. We can access black goo also from the little pictures from the microscope. This is German rain. And if you want to know what this liquid does, you can have a look at it in the lab. When you have bigger amounts of it, it looks like this. This is something you can just observe in the lab. And especially this liquid was extracted from those black stones. Yeah. And this black goo has to do something with the communication with demons. This is in the black magic tradition. These black goo schists were used to communicate with the demons. So this all interconnects on political, scientific, and the level of mythology. This is something you can just observe in the lab. And especially this liquid was extracted from those black stones. This is World War II leftovers. We found them in an underground facility in Bavaria, 1/2 ton of it. So we can imagine that the SS processed quite a bit of this. And I guess that the guys found also the technology to extract the oil from it. Must have been there in written form because they did it in the lab successfully. If you look at those stones, you have a brief history of things reported out of former times. You have, if you look at H.P. Lovecraft, the descriptions of the black magic communities in Eastern Europe, they had kind of sculptures out of this black oil schist. And once a year they went there slaughtering little babies to get the demons out of the stone, sacrificing little children to communicate and get the service from the demons. This is one thing mentioned. If you go back in history, planet, and it is very likely that we can put the date at 80,000 BC, connected to the destruction of the Lemurian continent. This is a soft source, I would say. I wouldn't call it hardcore science, but many, many things hint to this. And people who have memory of incarnations in that time report that in the moment when Lemuria went down, there was a swarm of meteorites coming in, hundreds of them, hitting the earth, containing this black goo. And they also say that connected with these meteorites, there was an invasion of a species that said actually that they are in trouble and that they need asylum, and ask the people of that time to give them that asylum. And after some times they realized that this was fraud, that they begged for help, and the moment they were let in, they started to manipulate the subconsciousness and send mankind to an ugly state, to the ugly state we're in now still.
Ecophagy is a term coined by Robert Freitas that means the literal consumption of an ecosystem. It derives from the Greek word and Latin word, which refers to house or household, and the Greek phagion, to eat the household. Freitas used the term to describe a scenario involving molecular nanotechnology gone awry, in this situation called the Grey Goo scenario. Out-of-control self-replicating nanorobots consume entire systems, resulting in glomo-ecophagy. However, the word ecophagy is now applied more generally in reference to any event, nuclear war, spread of monoculture, massive species extinction, that might fundamentally alter the planet. Scholars suggest that these events might result in ecocide and that they would undermine the capacity of the Earth's biological population to repair itself. Others suggest that more mundane and less spectacular events, such as the unrelenting growth of the human population, steady transformation of the natural world by human beings, will eventually result in a planet that is considerably less vibrant and one that is, apart from humans, essentially lifeless. These people believe that the current human trajectory puts us on a path that will eventually lead to ecophagy. In the paper in which Freitas coined the term, he wrote, "Perhaps the earliest recognized and best known danger of molecular nanotechnology is the risk that self-replicating nanorobots capable of functioning autonomously in the natural environment could quickly convert that natural environment, like biomass, into replicas of themselves, nanomass, on a global basis, a scenario usually referred to as the Grey Goo problem, perhaps more properly termed global ecophagy." And the article goes on further about the archonic imitation in television. Jay Widener concludes, "Humans are imitated on television, but the imitation is altered and always obscene and profane because the archons not only do not understand the sacred, but they hate it. They are jealous of the natural world and human beings with the natural world, also of sexual relationships, loving couples making them angry, and they love violence and are sexually titillated by anger, war, and death. They create war to consume energy from the dying. This would explain why we see so much violence and sex on TV, and why pornography sites are rampant on the internet." Also, it goes on, "Archons, a parasite of a different order." Exploring the archons in his new book, Wetiko, the greatest epidemic sickness known to humanity, Paul Levy writes, quote, "When people are infected by Wetiko virus, they are the host for the Wetiko parasites. The Wetiko germ is a psychic tapeworm, a parasite of the mind. Just like certain computer viruses of malware infect and program a computer to self-destruct, mind viruses like Wetiko can program the human biocomputer to think, believe, and behave in ways that result in our own self-destruction. Wetiko is a virulent psychic pathogen that insinuates thought forms into our mind, which, when unconsciously enacted, feed it and ultimately kills its host." That's us, folks. "It doesn't want to kill us too quickly, however, for to successfully implement its agenda of reproducing and propagating itself through the field, it must let the host live long enough to spread the virus. If the host dies too soon, the bug would be prematurely evicted and would suffer the inconvenience of having to find a new residence. That answers the question why they don't kill us off all at once. Mr. Levy continues, like a cancer of the mind that metastasizes in the Wetiko disease, a pathological part of the psyche co-opts and subsumes all of the healthy parts of the psyche into itself so as to serve its pathology. To quote Carl Jung, quote, an unknown something has taken possession of a smaller or greater portion of the psyche and asserts its hateful and harmful existence, undeterred by all our insight, reason, and energy, thereby proclaiming the power of the unconscious over the conscious mind, the sovereign power of the possession. The personality then organizes an outer display of coherence around this pathogenic core, which masks the inner dysfunction, making it hard to recognize. In a psychic coup d'etat, the Wetiko bug can usurp and displace the person who becomes its puppet and its marionette. So in short, where we think that man is controlling the machine, the Archon and its black goo, the use of the black goo, is technology controlling and about to take over man, or is taking over man, to its ultimate demise, to our ultimate demise.
What we need to realize is that there are two qualities. One quality is coming from inner Earth, and one quality is coming from outer space. And they feel completely different. The Falkland black goo is called sentient oil because it has full empathy. If you're getting close to this oil, you're coming in a state of mind that is full of love and empathy. You find them in the Kaaba in Mecca, the same form of phallus-shaped structure that is described in Vedic script as Shiva's lingam, that is described in this Lovecraft script. A fragment of it is part of a central part of the Kaaba in Mecca, and every Muslim in the world is asked to go there once in his life and to kiss this stone. If you go back, you find them on Turkish and Roman, Greek and Turkish coins. You see them left and right of the tree of life in the paradise garden. So getting in contact with this black goo is what caused the deterioration of paradise. And it is not easy to understand the overall concept, because when you start to deal with black goo, the first thing you need to discover before anything makes sense is that there are two different qualities. We have liquid black goo. It is basically, it has been found on a southern Falkland island, Tula Island, and this is what the war with Argentina was about, accessing this black goo. We have this type of earth black goo in the Gulf of Mexico. This was what the Deepwater Horizon catastrophe was all about. Somebody was shooting a torpedo at the facility, destroying the attempt to get the black goo out of Mother Earth. And we had, I think, eight military submarines getting close to World War III, trying to capture some of that oil after Deepwater Horizon was destroyed. And no single civilian was allowed to go to the beaches to remove the oil. It was just military personnel with special equipment and fully shielded against the influence of this substance. So this is one quality that comes from Mother Earth. And then you have a second quality that is found in connection with meteorite sites. If you look at the thing in Paraguay, you can exactly see by the form the stones are broken in the environment that was an impact of a meteorite. If you look into the Arabic mythology, they say the thing in the Kaaba in Mecca is a fragment of a meteorite. And this is now not against Muslims. If you look into the Peter's Dome in Rome, you have a big piece of this stone. under the Peter's Dome. And if you analyze all the churches built in Middle Ages in Europe, every altar has a black altar stone. And what you feel when you enter a church is not the love of God. It is more like a cold fear. After my first contact with the stones, I was this close from killing the hotel director, because she complained that I took a shower, although I had to sleep outside. They didn't have any rooms left, so I slept in the car, was dead frozen in the morning, and took a shower in a room of a friend who had the last room that was available. And she just complained that I took a shower without asking for permission. I was really close to killing her. This is what these stones do with people as long as they're unconscious.
Splitting of the atom, programmable matter. And now we've mapped its genome.
Aye.
Now you've mapped its genome.
Now we can begin to give it instructions.
This is extremely good. Watch this. We can change anything into anything.
Sensual almost, don't you think? Do you like music? The pill. Perhaps something a little more violent?
This is a rather complex thing. You have to regard the entire planet as a electromagnetic resonator, and you have waves running around the planet, and with a wave kind of biting in its own tail, you get self-strengthening structures. And at the end, you get the sum of all platonic bodies standing as standing waves around the planet. And they have defined frequencies. Schumann frequency is the most known of them. And then the same thing happens in the core of the Earth. You have electromagnetic fields that travel through the stone, and they also build up a grid like this of platonic structures and other structures. And this goes around the planet. You can measure this by sticking two electrodes into the ground, and then you measure 50 hertz from the European electricity grid, and you measure 60 hertz from the American electricity grid. Same strength as the European one. This goes around the planet. And if you look at this structure, you can kind of ask yourself the question, are the sky and the earth in harmony with each other? Are they resonating on the same frequencies or not? And the thing is, if they resonate on the same frequency, then the two field structures can unite and print out scalar structures, scalar fields. This is what we call life force. Yeah. So life force on planet is dependent on the unification of two longitudinal waveforms that need to be in harmony. In former times, we had the trees with an antenna system to the air and an antenna system to the ground, keeping this resonance stable. Yeah? Then they started to cut down the rainforests, and then you come into this desert state. Desert state means no plants available, disconnection between the two systems, and then they start to play their individual frequency games. Do not reconnect at any point because there's no antenna system reconnecting them. And then you don't have the development of life force anymore. And then you deeply go into the desert status. So the entire technologies based on Wilhelm Reich are there to reconnect and to extract the wrong frequencies. And this is kind of giving us back the life force. And once we regain life force, we start to ascend, and then we collide with the world of the demons.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they hate. Yeah. They
And
hate
then they can't act from the hidden. People who are kind of have high vibrations, high amount of scalar potential accumulated within their system, they will shine. This is what you see when you have an holy man in front of yourself. Yeah. and they will be able to see the archons, because they're getting closer and closer to their realm.
Yes.
And this is something because their entire biology depends on being invisible.
Compassion, more kindness, more love, more care. And those are simple human things that we should have towards each other. Once we start to do those simple things towards each other, start to really truly care of what's going on, I think that this presence won't be able to mess with us anymore. And it'll be put back down. It will be thrown back down into the lower depths where it came from. I think that this isn't a wake-up call. It's sort of like when you're sick, your body's telling you there's something wrong. This is a wake-up call. It's trying to tell us, humanity, something is wrong right now. And if you don't take care of it now, it's going to overtake you. Your own creation is going to overtake you. And I believe that we feed this stuff with all of our negativity. If we start to be more kind and compassionate, then it'll be fine in the end. But I think it's pretty much just, that's about it. That's how we'll be fine in the end, is when we start to really care, especially for the children of the world, because children of the world are what is our hope. They're what's precious. We need to start getting more involved with children. We need to start spending more time with them. We need to start teaching them things of essence. I mean, getting our children to plant things, to stop watching so much television and being programmed themselves.
You say you are true evil. Shall I tell you what true evil is? It is to submit to you. It is when we surrender our freedom, our dignity, instead of defying you.
But how? How do we transform the collective human trance into wakefulness? How do we bring about the mass awareness of the people? And what steps can be taken to allow both humanity and the earth to once again return to a natural state of abundance? Clearly, the first step is for people to understand and accept the truth regarding the current condition of mankind and the urgency of addressing the situation we are faced with. But even when people know the truth, as many do, most are simply waiting for social or financial Armageddon, waiting for December 21st, 2012, waiting for ascension, or waiting for the rapture. And due to this lack of positive and decisive action, while people wait for redemption to be delivered to them via an outside source, the destructive machine of modern civilization continues to grind slowly forward towards its inevitable conclusion. Obviously, it is extremely important for mankind to truly grasp the depths of the problems we are facing and to the peril that our collective failure to deal with things has placed us in. And this peril includes not only the human race, but the entire earth and all life upon it. Because if mankind allows the ship of state to continue sailing in its current direction, within possibly 3 to 5 generations, we are very likely to have allowed the creation of a world that will no longer support life as we know it.
So that everything from fluoride, everything is all about making the body acidic so that the entity can live in your body. When your body's alkaline, it cannot do that. It can't attach to your body because your defenses are all up and it cannot. But when you're acidic, you have holes in your aura, you have different holes in your energetic body so that it can enter and literally stay in there. That was quite interesting because it's like they put it right in front of you and it's sitting right there and people think it's fantasy, but it's really not fantasy. It's real and it's really horrible because all the things that are happening to children, to people are being sacrificed every single day. People are being taken from their homes. They're being sacrificed. Not their energy. They're being taken. Their energy is being taken. Not only that, they're being used as human guinea pigs. Not only that, they're being used as literally cattle. Humanity doesn't. It's really a victim to all these things going on. However, they're so asleep that it's hard for them to understand these things are going on. It's quite shocking for them.
This is what happens. You get old, you get bloated, you get tired. I was a beautiful girl when this whole thing started, and now, well, you see. But I've survived, so I feel an obligation to leave a record of events. Even if it doesn't save my life, it will help other people. Destructive, very destructive. And I really don't see what there's much you can do about it. I wouldn't run to the authorities. I was fortunate in the beginning. The trusted authorities were harassing me. So I was, didn't run to the authorities and go, ooh, I'm being harassed. Because if you do that, they have immediate orders to label people who are gang stalking targets. That's why nothing ever gets done about it. So don't go running to them. And if family members don't want to look at what's happening to you and they say you're crazy, get the hell away from them. Because they're either in on it, or they don't want to deal with you, or they don't believe you because they can't handle it. If you're smart enough to even have figured it out this far, go for the gold. Go for the long haul. Because you staying alive, figuring out what they did, documenting it, will piss them off more than anything else. And I want you to piss them off. I want you to make a blog and need testimony. And everyone who's a naysayer is like, oh, she's just crazy, or they're just crazy, or... That's not your problem. Your problem is being targeted every day. That's your problem. And it's going to kill you. Get it? It's going to kill you.
Myron May, thank you for bringing the light to this, but you didn't have to die to get your fucking point across. Okay? You didn't. Aaron Alexis too. He didn't have to fucking die to get his point across. And it's fucking sad that these people are going to these measures just because no one wants to listen to them.
It's with a heavy heart that I am in front of you now to make this video. Kind of my last words. It's really unfortunate that I have to make this video. You see, I am a victim of covert harassment and electronic harassment and gang stalking. I'm what's called a targeted individual. I don't get to have a normal life because I'm a targeted individual. I don't get to have a wife and kids and a career where I get to rise and fall on my own merits. That's not what targeted individuals get. What we get is grief and pain and hardship and loneliness. And it's not fair. Those everyday ordinary innocent people, and somehow we've ended up on this ungodly evil list of people who have their lives literally destroyed on a day-to-day basis. I know that you're hurting mentally, financially, physically, emotionally. I know that you're hurting, and I admire your strength and courage to keep fighting the good fight. Hang in there, stay strong. There's a little bit of shame in me that I don't have the same strength and courage that you have. And please don't let my story die. Don't let this video die. Don't let any documentation die. Post it and repost it as much as you can. And if you do that, know that you'll be helping thousands of American citizens just like me. And quite frankly, who are just like you. You'll be helping them to have a chance at a normal life, the life that you have. One where you get to rise and fall on your own efforts and your own merits. And after all the loss associated with this, after all the loss, think about that. Think about all the loss and then ask yourself, is it worth accepting those challenges? And lastly, my message to God, this one will not be in the form of a prayer, although it is pretty much a prayer that's been on my heart for the better part of a week. Father, forgive me for what I'm about to do. Forgive me for all of my sins, past sins, present sins, any future sins.
Well, chaos was king overnight on the campus of Florida State University. Another school shooting. Students scrambled for cover as a gunman wounded 3 people, one of them critically. After some confusion, campus police confronted the man with the gun. At one point, the man opened fire on the FSU PD. They returned fire, killing the suspect on the spot.
Shots fired. What's your 20? Shots fired. Suspect down.
What you just saw is newly released video from the night of the FSU library shooting. Good afternoon, I'm Eden Schultz.
And I'm Julie Montanaro. Among the videos released this afternoon, surveillance video that shows Myron May walking into Strozier Library just minutes before shooting and wounding 3 people.
Was firing outside of Strozier, came in, fired a couple shots in the lobby.
Headquarters, shots fired. Headquarters, shots fired.
Eyewitness News reporter Chris Groh is in the studio with more. Chris.
Eden, Julie, 911 tapes, dash cam video, and surveillance cam video were all released today, never before seen, painting a clearer picture of what happened in the early morning hours of November 20th. But first, we do want to warn you, some of the video you're about to see may be disturbing. Surveillance video shows gunman Myron May walking into Strozier Library. He then walks out after he can't pass the building's turnstiles. Around 20 minutes later, you see May walk back in after shooting and wounding Ronnie Ahmed and grazing Elijah Velez outside. May then sets his sights on Nathan Scott, firing once behind this desk, wounding Scott. But then he either reloads his gun or jams Nathan Scott and his co-worker, then escape. When May walks away, Scott and his co-worker try to get away, but watch as 2 different people walk by May before he finally heads outside.
He came into the lobby of the library. My co-worker and I were under the desk, and he fired a shot and went back out the door.
Now what you're looking at is dash cam video from FSU police showing when officers arrived on the scene. May would be confronted by officers from both FSU and TPD. Tallahassee Police's final report says May made a motion as if he was going to swing around, and that's when officers fired.
He said something, but he was talking like really quiet, and I'm screaming at him, It's like, drop the gun. Then I hear him say, like, I'm gonna make you kill me. You just have to kill me. And so at that point, I was like, all right.
And so that's why we are here. We are trying to elucidate, enlighten the rest of the population, and hopefully they care. Hopefully they'll, research a little bit more and say, that could happen to my child. That could be me. And they'll do something, write their senator or whatever the motive would be.
Yeah. And if we all understand the game, we can just say, hey, stupid game, let's let go of it. And we can stop playing these thing that basically is nothing else than being afraid of self-responsibility. And I think we are at the point in history where every single individual should master that, to regain self-responsibility, and then we will not need a government. It's not about changing the government. Because the entire concept of governments, having somebody to control, is demonic. It's not about replacing people. It will never work. We need to replace the game. We enter a world of abundance. And this can only work if also the psychology of the scarcity is leaving. If we let go of this and start to trust the other cycle of, I know that there's enough of everybody. This is why I let go everything I don't need in this moment and share it with other people. And they gain trust in the thought that there really is enough for everybody. And this is also self-strengthening. And at the moment we are kind of diving through the hole of the needle, leaving one system, entering the other one. It's a process that is going to take place during the next 3 to 5 years. And when we are through, nothing is going to be the same on this planet. The ones who survive this are the ones who collect the spirit and swim in front of the wave.
I've survived a lot of things, People look at me and they would never never ever realize what I've been through, and I don't even want to explain what I've been through, but I can tell you this, that throughout everything that I survived, it's because I remembered love. And I would, even there was days where I didn't have anything and I was in the worst situation. I was just a little child, and I would wake up and I'd look at the sun every morning and I just have so much heart love and be so happy and smile, and a person would be like, why are you smiling? And you're not allowed to smile. Why do you smile? And I would explain to them, because I feel love, and that is very, very important to me. All this time, I think I have survived because of the fact that my heart is open, and I really do care about people, and I really, really, really see that others, the really sad thing, people aren't working from their heart. They're working from their ego or from other things, and it messes them up. And if everybody would just start opening their hearts and being kind and compassionate and caring, it's not no religion to do those things. It's something normal that we have forgot to do. If we do those more often, the world would be a much better place for us and our children. So it was also trying to break me in that way. It was trying to give me these emotions so that I would let go, because I was terrified. That instant, I decided that I should stop giving in to it, what it was doing to me on a spiritual level, and I decided to pull in inner peace inside of myself, which I've been able to do since a child, sort of peace and calm, because I understand in the end that I have a connection direct to Source, which I guess people would call God, which isn't even the right word for it at all, because it isn't a being sitting up in heaven, but divine source of all. So I got this inner calm, and then suddenly it let go of me, and I was fine after that.
And what do you think about those people that don't buy your story? Does that not bother you?
Not in the least. Truth never goes away, and it's like a seed planted. It is going to blossom and come to fruition, because it's everywhere around us. It's in so many aspects of society, and once people's eyes are open to truth, even if they don't want to see it, they're going to start seeing it around them. So no, that doesn't worry me in the least. It's not important that they know my truth. It's important that they know their own, and everybody's on their own learning path. They're going to get the truth. They're going to.
That was wrong. So today, on behalf of another generation of American leaders and another generation of American citizens, the United States of America offers a sincere apology to those of our citizens who were subjected to these experiments, to their families, and to their communities. When the government does wrong, we have a moral responsibility to admit it. The duty we owe to one another to tell the truth and to protect our fellow citizens from excesses like these is one we can never walk away from. Our government failed in that duty, and it offers an apology to the survivors and their families, and to all the American people who must be able to rely upon the United States to keep its word, to tell the truth, and to do the right thing. Make no mistake, as the committee report says, there are circumstances where compensation is appropriate as a matter of ethics and principle. I am committed to seeing to it that the United States of America lives up to its responsibility. Our greatness is measured not only in how we so frequently do right, but also how we act when we know we've done the wrong thing, how we confront our mistakes, make our apologies, and take action. That's why this morning I signed an executive order instructing every arm and agency of our government that conducts, supports, or regulates research involving human beings to review immediately their procedures in light of the recommendations of this report and the best knowledge and standards available today, and to report back to me by Christmas.
Sorry.
Compassion, more kindness, more love, more care. And those are simple human things that we should have towards each other. And once we start to do those simple things towards each other, start to really truly care of what's going on, I think that this presence won't be able to mess with us anymore. And it'll be put back down, it will be thrown back down into the lower depths where it came from. I think that this isn't a wake-up call. It's sort of like when you're sick, your body's telling you there's something wrong. This is a wake-up call. It's trying to tell us, humanity, something is wrong right now. And if you don't take care of it now, it's going to overtake you. Your own creation is going to overtake you. And I believe that we feed this stuff with all of our negativity. If we start to be more kind and compassionate, then it'll be fine in the end. But I think it's pretty much just, that's about it. That's how we'll be fine in the end, is when we start to really care, especially for the children of the world, because children of the world are what is our hope. They're what's precious. We need to start getting more involved with children. We need to start spending more time with them. We need to start teaching them things of essence. I mean, getting our children to plant things, to stop watching so much television and being programmed themselves.